Hey, what's up guys? It's your boy Daze, and you're about to watch Thorin rant for about 3 hours.
Everybody loses in war, but you lose more. What do you think we brought back the Panthers and the Zulus for? Immortal witch doctor made himself a voodoo doll for every motherfucker that fronted that I can recall. Oh, sorry there. You just caught me. I like to doodle a little bit, you know, when I'm trying to come up with ideas. It sort of frees up the unconscious a little bit, loosens the girders of rational thought, you know. So just come up with this here. See, I've got here. I love Skrill esports pool, of course, esports pools. You know, they've got the in-play betting. Wow, in-play bet. Wow. Then fantasy, don't forget fantasy. And so in line with the fantasy esports that they have, there's me wearing a Skrilla, a crown of Skrill, a philosopher god king holding what, I don't know if you can see that. That's the Skrill scepter of knowledge. It's sort of like a book open, because the world is an open book to the Renaissance man, to the intellectual. And yeah, that's what I'm holding there. So yeah, just I know what you're already thinking, right? Oh, it's a bit of a weird pen you've got there, Thorin. So you're telling me you don't want a pen like this? Look at it. It's delightful. You can literally write things, same as you can do with a normal pen. But you can also caress yourself. Can you do that with a fountain pen? Probably not, right? Also, it's blue. Obviously for boys, isn't it? Probably timestamp that joke. Be considered literal hate speech. I'll have you put in a gulag in about 5 years. Okay. This is the first ever one of my monthly video AMAs, which I'm doing as part of my Patreon for people who want to support my work financially and also want to get exclusives, like want to get little teasers on upcoming work or get to submit a question to this monthly video AMA or want to suggest a guest for me to interview or to have on a show or a topic to talk about or maybe a Reddit comment they want me to address at some point in time. So I had my patrons. It's everyone who I think donates $50 or above, or was it more than that? I can't remember. I think it's less than that. It must be way less than that. I think it's maybe 10. Let me actually double check. I should probably check this, right? Let me see what the actual amount you had to donate was. I think it was $10. Let's have a look. Yes, anyone who donated $10 or above had the opportunity to submit a question. I make a thread on my Patreon page, and I took all the questions here. Now, I will say, I did set a time limit that people had to submit the questions by, and some people did submit after the time limit. But being as I hadn't made the video yet, and maybe I'll get to them, I will just try to treat them as if they were any other question. But in general, if I set a time limit, you got to get under that time limit. So what I'm going to do is I've put these in order of when people submitted them. And so if for some reason I run out of time, then the latter ones will have to suffer. So the first question is by Spoonfed89, and he says, I've always been interested by Executor, spelled X-E-Q-T-R, very old school Norwegian player in CS 1.6, by Executor, but find very little in-depth information on him. What kind of in-game leader was he, and who is his closest CSGO counterpart? Right, this is where me not having a website yet is a problem when you want to know about the history of the game. Because yes, you can look up a Wikipedia page and it will just say what team they might have played for or what their accomplishment was. But it won't be able to tell you anything about them as a player. And nor will you find very much content about them as a player, because in the case of someone like Executor, they retired largely before long in-depth interviews were a thing. Now, again, I am actually having a website commissioned, so I will have a website that archives all my old content. And one piece of content I did was I actually did, long after he'd retired, a 3-part in-depth text interview, which, by the way, I actually think are superior to video interviews because you can read them much quicker and you can get a lot more interesting insight because the person has more time to think up their answer and backspace and really write it the way they want to and remember things. And so I did a 3-part interview with Executor on the SK Gaming website when I used to work for them. I think I did it in 2011 off the top of my head, 2011 or 2010. I would say 2011. And he goes into all the details about his career. Now, basically, what's interesting about him as an in-game leader is he's one of those players who wasn't an in-game leader early in his career. In the first few teams he played for, I mean, in the first NIP, he wasn't the in-game leader. That was actually the AWPA Hib was the in-game leader. Then when he was in SK Scandinavia with Potney and Heaton, I believe it was swapped at times between Executor, but he was more of a loose in-game leader because at the time, the game much more accentuated individual skill, especially before 1.5 came out, and they had the most skill-stacked lineup, and so they used to play off star players. And so he might have been a very loose in-game leader. I believe he swapped that role between him and Potty, depending on what the era was. Later in his career, when he played in the Eolithic team, now he was a proper in-game leader. But even then, he did the tactical side of things. He did essentially like the quarterbacking. Like he came up with how we were going to execute the plan and made the plan go into action. But actually, some of the read for what to do potentially came from Element. And they actually had a famously, I mean, considering as personalities, they very rarely ever got along and were almost chalk and cheese in that sense. Because one of them was a very serious person, one was a kind of a very frivolous person in some senses, or wasn't as dedicated. Executor being a very serious person, and they made an amazing duo though. The creative tension between them was fantastic. And so what happened was Element was amazing at reading the game and having a sense of what the opponent was doing. He would then make those calls to Executor, then Executor would call from the playbook what to do. And that was probably the best matchup they had. And obviously they reunited in NOA, won a major, won one of the WEG tournaments, the first ever WEG season. So that was obviously a key element. That's the thing. He was a very tactical in-game leader. And part of that came from especially the period where he went after Eolithic to play in Team 9, or Esports United, which was the team that Westerlund led. And Westerlund is one of the all-time great in-game leaders for pure tactics and for making it an execution-based game and having set roles and playing a very slow game, but playing a very tactical game and understanding all the maps. And so playing with him, I think, just refined Executor's in-game leading kind of nous and knowledge and intuition even further, so that then in later teams, he could take that role on and be just the in-game leader entirely and have great effect. Now, it wasn't as cool towards the end of his career, because at the end of his NOA career, first of all, he had some of these lineups where it was a mixture of Norwegian and Swedish players, like at WEG Season 3. That wasn't a very good period of time, quite frankly. He didn't have the star players at that point. And then he made this weird lineup, which was half Norwegian, half Danish, because obviously he was a Norwegian player, and Norwegians and Danes, in theory, some of them can understand each other. Like Norwegian and Danish, there actually used to be a language shared between them. That was a long, long time ago, admittedly. And so he actually had, I believe it was Zonic and I'm not sure if it was Ave at that point in time. Sonic and Ave? I'm not sure. No, I think it was like maybe a Bloody or something. I'm not sure, but he later made a line, and that wasn't really that good. So he was a very strict in-game leader, but he came from being not an in-game leader. So if I'm going to find his closest CSGO counterpart, I've probably got to pick someone like that. Because if I just want to pick just tactically, I'd probably say someone like MSL. In fact, actually, maybe MSL's not a bad shout. Now, admittedly, Executor in the early days of CS 1.6 was literally a star player. He had amazing clutch power. He was very, very good on LAN at a period of time when there were very few LANs, and so a lot of really good players weren't actually. And he never had amazing aim, but he had pretty good fragging power. Now, I'm not sure who that would compare him to, because again, the circumstances are just so different. Maybe someone like Crims, I guess. That might be an alright call, but the problem is Crims has never become an in-game leader. So as an in-game leader, I'll say someone like MSL. I think runs the set tactics he thinks works well. Maybe isn't the best at reading the game as a pure intuitive feel type approach, but very good at constructing a playbook and knowing what he wants from the playbook and what he wants from his players. Now, Byron Mayer says, you've briefly addressed this topic in the League of Legends context, but hoping you could give your opinion on it in CSGO. What do you think of the viability of the traditional sport roster system, i.e., large roster with many players competing for spots on the starting roster in CSGO? Do you think that the current methods teams use to practice restricts this possibility? Yes, the main problem here is there's two key factors that would hold this back from working in the way it works in League of Legends, and especially Overwatch League is actually the Overwatch as a game, and Overwatch League is the mode it's working the best in. But you have to realize two factors. One, in the Overwatch League, they literally have different game types. So that would be like if in Counter-Strike we had the explosion, the detonation DE mode, but then we also had CS. We had the one where you have the hostages, and then we also had escape, where the one we had to escape from a camp or whatever it was in the 1.6. If we had different game modes, yeah, it might make sense to have people practice and come in, for example, like Pine does to play Control for the New York Excelsior. In League of Legends, it makes more sense to have subs, because first of all, you have a lot of free time when you're not playing LCS or LPL or LCK, and you're all in the same city, and you're all at home, and you're all in a team house, so you can bring someone in for a certain scrim and practice something special with that guy, or have him play a different set of champions, a different set of heroes, which obviously doesn't exist in Counter-Strike again, so you do that to give yourself more variety in terms of the comp, or what look you want to give, or if you want to change up the game in that sense. Now, none of these factors exist in CS, but more so than that, there are actually inhibiting factors against it in CS. Like, first of all, in CS, teams travel to so many big tournaments that they don't get that much downtime to properly scrim and practice anyway. So you wouldn't have that much downtime to use these players. In fact, famously, over the last 2 or 3 years, it's become the case that due to so many tournaments and then so many online qualifiers and so many online leagues like ECS and EPL, some teams actually use the EPL and ECS games as kind of like a hybrid scrim. Like, yeah, it's an official match, but some of our only downtime before the next tournament, so we use it to try new shit out and to try a different map and to try working on things against an opposition that's going to try against us, as we'd hope in a scrim, and therefore we'll get good results out of it. So I think part of the problem is, would people want to field these subs in an official game? That's part of the issue. Then finally, at the LANs themselves, we have a different setup than they do in those other games. In those other games, in LCS, for example, they've changed back now to being best of one. So in a day, you will only ever play one game of League of Legends. So in LCS, you can bring in the sub guy for this one game because you feel like it didn't work with the last lineup, and he's got a whole day to prepare, and he's got time, and he knows he's playing, and it's just one game anyway. So everyone's not warmed up, and everyone plays one game. Likewise, if you go over to Overwatch League, yeah, you play the 4 games, but you're only going to play a few games in that sense. And plus, there's a different control. Obviously payload, etc. There's all the different type escort. And so as a result, the problem in Counter-Strike is, in a day, you might have to play in one of those IEM group stages that used to be round robin. You might have to play 3 games in a day. So do you want to bring a guy in for the 3rd game who hasn't played any games today and isn't warmed up, and take out a player who was warmed up, even if he's not working out for your team? Then add in that in other tournaments, yeah, some of them you only play 1 map in a day or 1 series in a day, but people want to take what they did on those maps they played early in the tournament and work on that and implement changes and tweak things. So part of the problem is, I do think it actually could work, and I actually would like to see it in the future, because I actually think that this is where the dream for me would be. Okay, a very famous example you could use was Na'Vi always refused to play Nuke. They always refused to play Cash as well. I always thought they should have picked one of those maps, and then in a world where you could have had a sub. Okay, Guardian was Na'Vi's best player, yes, but he was a very bad player on Nuke. He could never adapt to it in the same way as people like Kenny S did. Most AWPers couldn't. It's an AWPer's graveyard. Imagine if in that setting, you'd have had someone who was a rifle player, even someone simple like a Bondic, who could come in and just play Nuke. Or maybe he plays Nuke and Cash. Or maybe he plays Nuke, Cash, and Dust 2, depending on what the meta is. And then, well, I guess Guardian played Dust 2, but you know what I mean. And then Guardian plays Overpass, Train, Cobblestone, the maps that fit him. I actually think that that would be a pretty cool approach. And it would get rid of part of this thing of like, oh, we only play 4 maps or whatever. Because everyone who says, why don't they get better? Well, I've already made videos about that, haven't I? Showing how stupid it is. But if we want to expand and make the game, if these would actually result in better games for the public, etc., teams would be more competent. I think it would be pretty cool. The problem is, already salaries are incredibly high for players. Already it's going to be very, very tough. This is a factor that's going to play against it. It's going to be so tough to get someone to be willing to be the sub who only plays 1 map or only plays when someone else is playing badly, that as a result, I don't think you're going to get many players at the moment, unless they got a massive salary, who'll do that. And not many teams are going to want to pay a massive salary to a sub guy. So instead, a lot of people would probably take even 3/4 of that salary to go and be a starter for a lesser team from their country or from that region or whatever it may be. So I think there's a lot of problems there. I think it would be overcome if there was more money in a different league structure in the future. And I certainly think it would be cool in its own way. And yeah, it's something I'd like to see. I think it would actually improve the game. Just people at the moment, problem at the moment is not only do you have to overcome circumstances which do very much exist and inhibit that, but you absolutely would have to crack the paradigm that people have that this can't be the case and it can't be used this way. Because as I said, it has been done in other games, and I can see areas in which it would apply in Counter-Strike. Now, right, this is like looks like a Polish name, Matthias. So actually, that sounds like a Dutch first name, but this is a Polish surname, I'm pretty sure. Wojtasiak says, "Hi, following you on social media always gives me the feeling that you are hated by a big part of the CSGO community. And also, listening to BTN by the numbers makes it seem like the other esports communities aren't particularly fond of you either. I do quite like you. I mean, I do give you money, in parentheses. But I do view you as sort of the antagonist of esports. Not in a way that you are fighting against esports, but that a big part of the esports community fights against you. Do you see this role for yourself, and how do you feel about all of this?" Okay, so let's start with this, because actually this is a topic I'll probably address in a video, except instead of antagonist, which is absolutely perfectly fine, by the way to describe it in English, that's all entirely correct, and certainly the premise is one that I think is apt and suitable. I would instead address what is usually the straw man version of that, which is that people think that I'm a contrarian. And when they say that, unfortunately, that's not something they say in any kind of manner that's reasonable. That's actually used as the derogatory term to imply that all you do is listen to everyone else's position and they say, I'm going to take the opposite position. And that says that comes from what you can already hopefully see is a false dichotomy, that there are only two positions, what everyone thinks because it's reasonable, and then what the wacky eccentric people say in response because they don't want to be like the part of the cool crowd. They want to stand out and be hipsters and be like, I'm different from the crowd, I'm an independent person. No, there is no massive consensus. There's a general consensus as in what the most popular opinion is, but that doesn't even make up, I would say, even 50-60% of the community usually. I think there's a massive diversity of opinion in the community, and first of all, Reddit system means that a lot of it get downvoted, and then analysts and personalities, except for a small handful that you're probably thinking of and can name on Twitter, most analysts, etc., some of them come to me and say, oh, I agree with what you said on that topic, or, oh, you make a great point about that. But they will never say it themselves publicly. They don't want to say something that might be considered unpopular, or that goes against the grain, or that people might get upset at because it points out that someone who just won a tournament or something that just happened that's special had a factor into it, which sounds like it's downplaying it, or which will upset the fan base of that team who want to believe, no, we won because we're all the best and everything was so super duper and everything's just going up and Quantum Bellifier will be in the semi-finals of the next major. You know, people don't want to hear the unpopular truth, the untold truth that you're not allowed to say. And when I say truth there, oftentimes it isn't like truth in the sense of objective truth. Like sometimes there are times when I do view my role in the community as an antagonist, in as much as sometimes there are things about Chinese League of Legends and their economy, or about ES Force, or about certain gender activism, where people are painting narratives that, based on our current scientific or economic understanding, are absolutely false. They are lies. They are disingenuous, and the way they are presented is dishonest. And so when those are presented, and then people who don't agree with those feel like they can't risk their career, they're too scared to do so. I'm lucky, due to some of the hardships and some of the good things I've chosen to do in my career, that I'm in a position where I'm a little bit more bulletproof and I can choose to address those topics. And I can be, in my opinion, the voice of reason at times, or the person who can say the thing that no one else is allowed to say. And so it gets said in that particular sense. It's actually something, I'll get into this in a video, it's been a role played by different people throughout history. But in esports, there's very few people who do that. Now, in terms of the part of the fact that I said about objective truth, sometimes it will not be objective truth, it will be subjective truth, it will be my opinion. And again, just because the consensus or what people are perceived to all think as a group hive mind is a particular way, isn't going to stop me from saying my opinion if I think otherwise. Now, there are times that I agree with the general consensus, like I do think Coldzera is the best player in the world. I actually do think that SK Gaming is the most clutch team. I actually do think that NIP is in some ways a magical team. I mean, in a very probably different sense to their fans do. But yeah, there's a lot of things I think that actually Cloud9 did deserve to win that major when you look at how they played. But anyone who goes deeply into any area is going to take with them their idiosyncrasies. And as they sort information, it's going to come through the lens or the prism of their mind, their experiences, their critical thinking, their structures of thought. And so actually anyone who goes down that route is going to differ greatly or smallly, depending on what the topic is, from the crowd and from the general consensus of the most casual people who haven't looked into these areas on a very deep level, or have and themselves have gone down their own little path and therefore come to different conclusions and modeled the game differently. So I definitely think that reason I look weird in that sense is I'm one of the few people who's willing to come out with these opinions all the time, and so I stand out from the crowd in that sense, whereas a lot of other people, actually I know on a personal basis, think some of these things or think their own wacky ideas and just don't say them. And actually, one of the things I have done very often in my career is encourage some of those people, no, make this opinion public about Chinese League of Legends and what you think, or say that you think this person's underrated, or why don't you dare to say that that guy is overrated or that he did something wrong if you actually believe that. I try to encourage you, because if we all come out and say this, it removes this false dichotomy that there's just contrarians and then the consensus, and somehow, oh, how could all these people be wrong? You know, you're just a contrarian. That's something that actually I do think is a problem. Now, in terms of the first part, that I'm hated by a big part of the CSGO community, no, I'm not. I mean, if you look at the success of my work and you look at the success of streams that I own, and you look at how many people come up to me at events and how many people actually hit the like button on YouTube videos, etc., the majority, an overwhelming majority of the CSGO community either likes my content, or likes my content and my persona, or likes something about what I'm doing, maybe even likes to dislike me, and therefore enjoys me as a villain or as an antagonist, etc., and generally enjoys me as part of the community. What happens, though, is there is a very, 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 very small vocal minority, and the problem is they look like more than a very, very, very small vocal minority, because a normal person who likes or dislikes something on Reddit either won't comment or will make one comment. These people ever go to a thread of mine in which a chain of comments starts where people are hating on me, like, but he's a racist and he said this, that, and the other, and he's biased. The people who say that won't just post once. If someone dares to respond and say, well, I disagree, they'll just have a massive argument with that person. And those people tend to post in those threads 10 times, sometimes more each. And in fact, RES tagged them. You'll see in future threads, those names just recur. So legitimately, in terms of very vocal people on like Reddit or Twitter, there legitimately might be 10 to 50 people, but who are producing hundreds of comments collectively. And so it might look like a lot more. Now, in terms of the idea that outside of Counter-Strike, other esports communities aren't particularly fond of me, I wouldn't really say that at all, actually. Like, I think in League of Legends, especially because in League of Legends, I have won pretty much every personal battle I've had with personalities, with organizations, etc., because I learned a lot of my lessons from games like CSGO and was able to apply better battle tactics and take losses and find the correct approach so that in the future, you kind of play the long position and eventually that can become a positive. I think I'm more liked in League of Legends than I am in CSGO, not least because in League of Legends, I mainly just produce content. I don't give opinions and claim to be an expert. And I think claiming to be an expert if you're a non-pro will always get certain people's rankles up. I mean, largely deranged people, admittedly. And so I don't think that there is the same response. Now, the Dota 2 community hates me, but that is easily the most immature, pathetic subreddit I've ever seen, where they already are a shitfest when they're talking about just their favorite players without me included. Then with the lack of moderation, I think, yeah, it's a terrible community. So I actually think that that's an example of where, you know, the saying that, like, if you don't have any enemies, you're doing something wrong. You should have certain enemies, and you should have the right enemies. And I'm very glad if those people consider themselves my enemy and dislike me, because good. I stand for everything that they do not. Fairness, the right to be able to give an opinion without necessarily being an expert, the ability to dare to speak against the opinion of a pro player that we all like, or to say, I think that guy's a bit overrated, actually, or to say, you know what, even though this guy's a nice guy, he's not playing that well at the moment. These are things that are verboten on that subreddit. So I think it's correct that I'm against that one. The StarCraft one's a bit more shady, because that's one where I provided that community with a massive amount of content for many years, even though StarCraft 2 was a game I have never enjoyed watching to this day. Now, I enjoyed Brood War very much. I did not enjoy StarCraft 2, but StarCraft 2 was the first game that I worked in for the love of being a journalist and to apply my skill set. I didn't do it for the love of the game, and for many years, I toiled away and made all this content without having an opinion and a persona. As soon as I started to showcase a persona on shows like Unfiltered, and then later when I went on to other games, that's another community that has always been about drama. That's a community of people where some of them might go, what, you watch soap operas, fucking loser? And then they're just like, oh my God, what's the new drama on this? What the fuck did Nanoa say? What? Oh my God, what's happening with this player over here? What? How could Desro do that? And just half of them, after the first 2 or 3 years of StarCraft 2, didn't even watch the game anymore, but they were just all over the fucking drama and on Reddit. So I feel like that's just a community, again, where it's actually quite correct that they should dislike me. Some of them. I wouldn't say all of them do. I think actually some of them probably did appreciate my content. They just weren't very vocal about it. And actually, StarCraft's a community I'm fairly indifferent to overall. I think the problem is it's just such a small community that it doesn't have all the really cool casual people who enjoy stuff that would water down the real assholes. Like Dota 2, massive amount of assholes. In StarCraft 2, it's like they've got less assholes, but just way less good people all in all, and therefore the assholes look like they're more of a percentage. CSGO, I think it's actually got a pretty cool bunch of people in general. It's just got a few nutters from certain countries. A lot of them don't understand English very well. And then League of Legends has got loads of casual people, very, very few true haters at this point in time. I've won so many battles that the true haters can't make a lot of impact. And actually, as a result, believe it or not, it's actually the coolest community to produce content for. Now, why do I not produce the most content for League of Legends? The game that would make me by far the most money, get me the most views, get me the most fame, get me the most plaudits, because my favorite game at the moment is CSGO. Therefore, I produce the most content for the game that I care about the most. I still do work for League of Legends, but I care about CSGO, and that's one of the beautiful things about my career, is that I did sacrifice a lot, and I made a lot of tough choices, and I worked harder than anyone that has ever worked in the esports industry, both consistently year on year and accumulatively. But in doing so, it put me in a position where I can choose to create certain content just to make money, but I can also spend the majority of my time creating the content I happen to like, and it can also make me money. And that's a beautiful thing, and that's one of the reasons why this Patreon not only is helping out a little bit right now, but hopefully in the future will become a primary source of these factors. And maybe I'll have a Patreon for my second channel, and maybe one day that will be the main thing I do, and it'll be cool because I'll just get up, I'll watch games, I'll live my life, but I'll be at home, and I'll make all these videos. I think that would be a pretty cool retirement from esports. I'd still be in esports, but I'd retire from doing the events, right? Could see it happening one day. Right, Jack Hanna, we're going to have to go a bit quicker here. I can't be giving like 20-minute answers to everything. Jack Hanna says, if there was one change you could make in-game in CSGO, what would it be? This can be a large change, like adding/removing maps from the map pool, or small, like just buffing the AWP or reverting the M4A1S nerfs. Right, the problem here is I've obviously complained about a lot of things in CSGO. I should probably make a video that's just my complaints, because I've obviously addressed them all in disparate videos that aren't connected and don't have any links. So the problem is I have to basically prioritize what I think the #1 thing to change is. So, when you say there, buffing the AWP, I think that's a really good one. That would really change a lot of the game. M4A1S nerfs, okay. I would say that putting like another 10 bullets on the M4A1S would be pretty cool, and that would give another option there. But actually, there's two factors that are coming up already for me that I would say are my two biggest qualms. One would be that I would want pistols to not be as good moving. So I would want the accuracy increased when you slowly tap them, but I would want it not to be very good when you move. Now, apparently, this is something that, we're talking to Sloth Squadron, maybe you actually can't change, because I think it's something to do with how the movement and inaccuracy works in the game, and that somehow if you change it for the pistols, then it would also have the knock-on effect, just in terms of the mechanisms of how the guns work, and change it also for some of the rifles and make them too accurate. Something bizarre like that. There was some like seemingly counterintuitive reason, but when he explained it did make sense. Because I do think that the OP pistols especially are overpowered, and more than that, I think pistol rounds are a fucking shitfest in CSGO and are way too random, because there's a bunch of people just juking all over the place. That is, just tapping bullets vaguely near each other's heads, and if one person dodges the wrong way, which you can't predict, all of a sudden he gets his head banged off. So I think that's a terrible aspect of the game. I mean, I guess in a way it balances out, because you can then win the force buy right afterwards with pistols. But I would say if I had to change one thing right now, one factor that I think almost certainly would make the game better, here's what I would do. I would make it so that the tagging is a lot more powerful when you get hit with a rifle bullet, because I think in doing so, that would make the game more like 1.6, where if I'm holding an angle, for example, coffins on Inferno, and 3 people run out into me and I spray into them, because they're getting tagged, that holds them in place a little bit or makes them move slowly, so I can also now channel my spray into them and get those kills. At the moment, because they can still sort of run, they run past my spray, and you don't get those really skilled spray downs, or the enemy forced to kill you. They can actually run past you at times. And I think that is a factor that I think has made the game just not as good, quite frankly, because one of the things that I thought was fantastic about 1.6 was that if you were an amazing player and you chose the right position and you played really well, you could sometimes just lock down a spot like that by yourself. So I think that would actually revolutionize the game. Okay, TMV23 says, always interested in learning about the history of Brood War, so I'm gonna ask about something that puzzles me. Lleyton won 3 OSL titles and was runner-up twice. In contrast to that, he did poorly in MSL, and his performance in Pro League was generally underwhelming as well. According to Wikipedia, what is this weird anomaly, and where would you approximately rank him on a list of greatest Brood War players of all time, right? So here's the problem with explaining Brood War to people. Okay, this is going to sound counterintuitive, but because Brood War is one of the most difficult games of all time, because at all points in the game, there are so many decisions you have to make correctly, both in terms of individual mechanical skill and strategical and tactical application, that okay, in fact, actually, I'll just break that down. Remember, strategy and tactics are different. Strategy is the general approach. Tactics are the specific implementations. So in Brood War, you have to make general reads on what the tech meta of the opponent is and what your response is going to be. Then you have to make the tactical implementation of what am I going to do in this specific moment for an attack or as a response to this, and then later set up for something else within my strategy. Then you have to mechanically execute it. Because it's one of the only RTS games I've seen that almost gives an equal share to all of those factors, it makes it so that, first of all, almost everything is possible and at all times, but also that it's also very, very difficult to do all of that. So what it means is that players who are at amazing peak form can win very consistently and can win a number of championships. But it also means, because other players have all these advantages and there isn't as much like meta shifts that make shit OP, it also means that the fact that they loaded the scene with so many players and had such a competitive scene meant that whereas if you'd have had half as many players, you know, Flash would have made like 12 OSL finals and, oh, not OSL, would have made like 12 finals, and Lleyton would have won 5 titles, and I Love Uv would have, you know, fucking 7 titles. Because there's so many people playing it and it's possible to be so great and to do so many amazing things, that actually it made it so competitive that even some great players only made 2 or 3 finals in their careers, only won 1 or 2 titles. There weren't many players who won 3 or more titles, no matter how great they were. And so as a result, first of all, the fact that Lleyton won 3 OSL titles is fucking amazing. That's really, really next level. I mean, let me just go ahead and put that in context for you. There are only 2 Zerg players in the history of Brood War with more titles than this man. That is Lleyton and Savior. And Lleyton might be the best combination between someone who had a killer instinct and real good read of the game and some of the best mechanics ever. And Savior is someone who was the I Love Uv of Zerg. He was the most tactically brilliant, strategically genius player, maybe to ever play the game entirely, but definitely within the Zerg race. Now, Lleyton was someone who played a lot more feel and a lot more of being a very ballsy player. If you're someone from another game, think of him as like a Virtus Pro. But he also had insane mechanical skills for his time. At his time, he actually might have been the best mechanical player. I think it would probably be between him and Nada at the time. Absolutely outrageously good player. So, first of all, the idea that he won 3 OSL titles and was runner-up twice, but didn't do very well in MSL or Pro League, that doesn't matter, by the way, mate. Like, already, there's not many players who can be like, I've got the 3 OSL titles, and I did pretty well in the OSL and Pro League. No, there's like, we're talking about, like, you know, the 4 or 5 players ever, maybe, who could even make that sort of case. Well, obviously, they wouldn't have 3 OSL titles, but, you know, 3 titles in some aspect. Secondly, there were many players who had success in one league, but not the other. Now, there's many factors as to that. First of all, there were only 3 of each of these leagues in most years. So you only have 6 chances. So it doesn't matter how good you are. If you only have 6 chances, you can be the best player of all time. You're not going to make all 6 finals. I mean, when Flash actually did that, that's why people think he's God and he just completed the fucking game. It shouldn't have been possible. So most great players didn't do that. So as a result, there are a whole bunch of players who are amazing. So for example, look on the other side of the equation. So my favorite player, Bisu, Protoss player, made 4 MSL finals, won 3 MSL titles, never made a single OSL final. was one of the best Pro League players of all time, won multiple Pro League titles, never made a single OSL final. Some of them, the format didn't fit them as much. OSL was a bit more of a random format because you had randomized seeding and the group stages were just drawn semi-randomly. Meanwhile, over in MSL, you had the group stage selection ceremony and you had GSL groups that gave you a second chance as opposed to some of the best of ones elsewhere. Then when you got to the round of 16, it was a best of 3 instead of still being part of the group stage like the OSL. Then when you got to the playoffs, you reseeded according to Kesper ranking. So actually the MSL promoted really good players going far. Now I will say, yes, that's why actually Lleyton is one of the big exceptions in history. Because why didn't he go further in the MSL in that sense? He was one of the best players ever. Well, you know what? I can put another player up who also was similar. So Stork, especially in 2007 to 2008, was one of the best players in the entire world, one of the most consistent players, and he didn't make a whole lot of deep runs in the MSL, which was the more consistent league and should have rewarded skill. But you know what? There was only 6 MSLs over those 2 years where I said he was the best or among the best. So he only had 6 chances to do it. He did make one of the finals and almost won the title. So, you know, it's one of those scenarios where there's no one factor that's going to account for it. There's no clear reason as to why. It's just the way things go. Sometimes players can be fantastic and make no deep runs. Flash in 2009 was actually a very, very good player. He was setting like a record for like TVT games, etc. And he didn't make a final that year until the very end. So it was just a scene where it's multiple things at once. Like, yes, it's very consistent. Yes, it allows you to do great things. Yes, there are formats that allow you to do great things. But at the same time, there are maybe more people in position to be a top pro and practice like a top pro than any other esports game has ever had, except maybe League of Legends when it's got a massive now. And I would say if you're playing in Turkey or NA, you're not really practicing the way the Koreans are anyway. So as a result, it was so overloaded with talent. Yeah, it was very tough. Then you've got to throw in, who were the players during Lleyton's era that had success in the MSL? Okay, we've got to put up Allaire, a player who was a massive rival of Lleyton, and they beat each other back and forth. You've got to put up someone like, I mean, Nada was still around at that point in time. Later on, Xavier. I mean, I will say, Lleyton did go out of a lot of the MSLs bizarrely early. Like, that was one thing that was a little bit weird in that sense. And so, yeah, it is a mystery. I will say that. Maybe it's something where someone might want to suggest it for one of those features I've done where I do investigative journalism on a certain piece. Maybe I could go and I could find out and I could get some of the old school people and ask them and look at the format and really go deep on this topic. Because at the moment, I can only kind of set up some factors as to why. Now, in terms of the part where you say his performance in Pro League was generally underwhelming, that's actually an interesting trend in Broodwall that not a lot of people understand. That's why, for me, the Take Bang Lee Sang of Stork, well, no, technically it'd be Bisu, Stork, Jaedong, and Flash. Those 4 great players, they really are the greatest generation in Broodwall. In the same way as the big 4 in tennis now is the greatest generation in tennis. Because it's not just that they were amazing and they were amazing in their era, but all of them, especially by the end of their careers, had a couple of years where they were amazing and the best player on their team in Pro League and in these individual leagues. So that just shows how incredible they got. And maybe it's something to do with the game having developed so much and coaching methods going so far and them having each other to test each other's skills against, because obviously they represent all the races. So you can have a really tough test against all the races. You can't have one weak race and just waltz to the final like certain players did in the past history. Looking at UKC. But I actually do think that people have been spoiled by that great generation of the Take Bang Lee Sang to think that a player who's amazing in individual league should also be amazing in Pro League. There were many amazing players who were really good in Pro League, but not in individual leagues. I mean, a great example would be C, the player from NBC game, the Terran. He was a fantastic player in individual leagues. Then you go over and you look at someone like, for the individual leagues, but not good in Pro League, I mean, a whole bunch of people in history. Many of the early great players weren't that sick in Pro League, quite frankly. Lleyton's obviously one of the great examples. Allaire wasn't necessarily that much of a monster. He definitely had a lot of wins when he was in his prime. Xavier wasn't really that amazing a Pro League player. There's plenty of really great players who were just good in Pro League, or maybe it didn't suit them as much. Remember, in Pro League as well, there's a different factor, where based on how you field the players and who you're going to field, oftentimes your star player is playing for Pro League and he's practicing for his individual league matches. So his time's divided. Then you have the opposing coach. One of the key secrets they learned in the Pro League was you pick a player who, let's say, plays one matchup really well, and you actually have him specialize on one map or 2 maps. And what you do is you're going to field him and tell him, practice for this one star player. And I'm going to field you, and they used to be called snipers. And I'll send you out to play this one match. And when you play it, you're going to have you're going to even the gap of how good you are with this player by having more practice and more practice for him specifically and on that particular map. And you might be able to get a cheeky win off him so that we beat their star player in the Pro League lineup, and then we win with our pro star player and we've got a win off you. That used to be a big factor, which also prevented you from winning in Pro League sometimes if you were a star player. So it's not really actually as crazy. Now, in terms of where I'd rank him on greatest Brood War players of all time, right, that's such an in-depth topic. Put it this way, he'd be top 10. I think I would certainly put him top 10. His accomplishments deserve that. The things he did deserve that. What he innovated deserves that. And his raw ability was fucking phenomenal. He really was an amazing player. And crucially for me, it wasn't just the mechanical skill. He had the mentality. He had the ballsy attitude to be willing to do these things. With that said, though, I do think the fact that he has the 3 OSL titles doesn't mean you should put him ahead of some players. Like, for example, Stork for me is a greater player, and Stork has far less titles. Stork did it all and for many years and was outrageous and played in the greatest generation. Now, Daniel Lane says, oh, fucking hell, I've got so many questions here. We'll see how long this takes. I might have to learn to just speed it up on some of these. Daniel Lane says, do you think Forrest would do better in another team? And if so, would he be able to reach top 3 players in the world? Right. First of all, would he do better in another team? Well, yes, in as much as I don't think NIP is a good team. And so I actually think even in a different version of NIP, he'd do better. Now, what I'd love to see is Forrest play in a team like FaZe. I actually think if you put him in a team like that, he actually might flourish in the way that someone like Olafmeister is now, where they're never going to be the best player, not even going to be the best player in their team, but they've got a lot more room to be a good player. They can play a half of a role and then play half more open because the system's way more open. They'll have certain maps and halves that they're very good on, like Olafmeister is amazing on CT side of Mirage, for example. I think that would be interesting. In terms of would he be able to reach top 3, that's the problem. I don't really want Forrest as my star player, like my best player in my team. I don't think you're going to have a team that's going to be itself top 3 or 4 if you do that. So would he be able to reach top 3 players in the world? Forrest actually hasn't been in the top 3 players in the world in many years of Counter-Strike. Like, he was in 1.6, but even in 1.6, I think a lot of people unfairly took him and Neo, because they always had the rivalry and therefore the connection, and they said, Neo and Forrest were both top 3 players in the world for like 6 years running. Nah, mate. Neo was, and even then, a couple of years, Neo was probably like 4th or 5th. Forrest, okay, he had a few years, I'd say maybe 3 or 4 years where he was a top 3 player, but he had a couple of years where he was like 7th best player, but because he's Forrest and he's royalty and people never used to criticize him, and I was actually one of the first to do so in that sense, people just ignored when he had bad games and when sometimes he got half carried by having super stacked teams, like in the latter days playing with Get Right and playing with the Fnatic and SK, what I would call almost super teams. And so I think people already are too kind of primed to overrate what Forrest's doing. So I think in CSGO for me, he was only a top 3 player for 6 to 8 months. I think it's about right, because then you got Shoxy and Kenny S and Guardian and Dosia, and these players were absolutely either jousting with him or better than him, quite frankly. So would he be able to reach top 3 players in the world? No. But then he wasn't for many of the times people think he was in the history. So let's keep it rolling here. Lazy Raven. Wait there a sec. Doesn't taste like metal at all. I have one LOL topic that I would like to hear your thoughts on. Right. When you ask a question like that, just say the question. Doesn't matter that you have one topic. What are the reasons behind EU outperforming NA international tournaments, despite the fact that NA looks to be constantly growing, at least on paper? This is another area where it's such a complex question that the answer needs to be very complex and take into account many factors, some of which might go against each other, but collectively form sort of a Hegelian dialectic synthesis, which will then make more sense. So I would add in a lot of factors here. First of all, you know when people say that EU servers are toxic? They're toxic in as much as people really care about winning. And people, even in this more fun, casual setting, want to win the game and want to do well at their role and want people to play correctly. That's That's very bad for super casual players who want to play for fun and who feel like this is mean and I'm not having as much fun. It's really good for producing very, very good players, for producing amazing mid laners, junglers who are very daring, players who play AD carry but can do it all as an AD carry. You look how weak the NA talent is. If NA didn't have importing, if you had pure region locking where NA could only put NA team players forwards and EU could only put EU players forwards, I'm going to tell you right now, not only has EU consistently outplaced NA at International League of Legends tournaments, but the disparity would be a fucking joke. I think what would happen was Korea would be way at the top. China would be second, but not super close to Korea. China and Europe would be similar, but with China slightly ahead. And NA would literally be the largest gap of the entire 4 groups of people below EU and way below China and Korea. Just look at the talent they brought through, look at the mentality of the players, it's more casual. People in NA in general, culturally, seem to, for some reason, it's just part of their media narrative and the whole spectacle of their society. They are way too obsessed with materialism and money. Ultimately, yes, these are great side products. These are things that, yes, you should care about how much you make because that's something about how smart your career decisions are. That's going to allow you the time to practice and to play for maybe not 10 years, but make a good living and therefore give up other things, but make it worthwhile. These are all correct factors. But if money dominates your vision and your perspective, you won't necessarily practice the most and you won't make the right team decisions. And you might play just for streaming money and to make your brand big, but not to improve, to become the best player you can. And therefore, like I always say this about money, it's the same line that Christopher Hitchens used to say about alcohol. Money makes a fantastic servant and a terrible master. So I actually think that a lot of the EU players, one of the things I respect so much about Xpeke and Froggen in the early days and Alex Hitch and Diamond Prox and Yankos and Mithy is that for so many of their years of their career, they were so good in terms of Western players that they had offers from these big NA orgs to go and play for them. But they knew that they would be more competitive playing in Europe and playing for a European team at an international competition. So they stayed in Europe for sometimes 70%, half, 30% salary of what they would have gotten in NA to be more competitive because their primary goal was to be very competitive and be the best player they could be. And then they wanted to get paid, so they would take the highest salary they could within Europe. But they wouldn't necessarily go and play in NA just as a merc, as a gun for hire, and play for a Dignitas or play for an Echo Fox. This is early in their careers I'm talking about, when it would just be playing for a bad team for a lot of money. And quite frankly, I have a hard time respecting some of the NA players who were good players who just didn't care as much because of streaming or thought, who gives a fuck, I'm making a lot of money anyway. And some of them were making more than top Korean players and still are, or were just like, I'll play for this bad team now or with bad players just because we're all going to get a great salary from this VC-backed org. I don't really respect that. So there's a lot of factors to go with that. I also do think that in NA, that whole participation award crowd has ruined a generation of kids. And so you've got these people growing up who think, but I did my best. I just did well, didn't I? It doesn't matter that I choked or that I played badly. You're not supposed to call these guys chokers or be mean and say that they're not playing well enough. That's why if you look historically, NA has produced so many talents in many esports games that are 16 or 17 and their talent's phenomenal, but they're chokers and it takes them years to get to grips with playing on the top level or being the star of their team. Meanwhile, Europe is much more akin to Asia, where they can produce 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, think of Reckless, who already, and Cooler and Cypher, who already at 15 or 16, thanks to the hardened mentality and the kind of, you have to fight for everything you've got in Europe, and people are a lot less kind of like just blowing smoke up your ass and fake hype and telling everyone that everything's fine. They already are battle tested and they come into the game ready to win now. Now, they might not have all the poise and the experience of a veteran. They might not have all the mental game of how to win, but they are able to unleash their talent in a way that NA talents often aren't. So it's a very complex topic. There's way more you could go into there. Now, Jerky's Minion says, the second round buy meta, he's talking about CSGO here, and how certain events affected it. The strat C9 used to buy 2 AKs and full armor and nades on 2 players will almost surely get picked up by several teams. What's your take on how the second round buys have evolved through the time of CSGO? The key thing to me that Cloud9 did, And even then, I don't know how coordinated it was. I know that they did it and it worked, but I want to know if there really was like a set win condition in their mind. Because I agree what they did should be adopted. In fact, I think a team like FaZe should go and adopt this themselves. Because if you have a couple of AKs and you have armor and nades on 2 players, you basically, if you put them on the right players, you can do what Neo and the Ukrainian players used to do with Na'Vi and the Poles back in 1.6, which is your star players get the kills and therefore get you more guns, or get kills or do damage, die, you pick up their gun, and you basically have super players because you drop armor, you drop the AKs to those guys, and then they buy armor, and you make your star player into a gun round player. Well, we know on gun rounds, star players, if they're set up correctly, can get 3 kills. So that can overcome a disparity of where if you've done a half buy of like, I have a Mag 7 and he has a fucking CZ and this guy has a UMP, that's probably a worse buy round because you have to really coordinate that. And if you take individual duels as you do in a normal terrorist execute or CT setup, you're not going to win out most of those. Odds say you won't win them. Whereas you have Nico with AK and an armor, and you put him in position to entry onto a certain spot where he normally would anyway, he may as well be a gun round. If he kills the first 2 people, what does it matter that the guys behind him had pistols and are just running behind trying to pick up guns? It doesn't, right? So for me, the interesting point about the evolution of the game is it's the paradigm of what the players are thinking themselves. What are we going to do with this force buy? So for example, one of the things that made it very interesting is in the early days of CSGO, I believe it was actually NIP that invented this. They did the P250s before we had like the CZ and the Tech 9. They did a P250 armor buy on the second round when they lost the pistol round sometimes. And the point was, NIP, I think, invented it, but Very Games were the ones who made it amazing because Very Games had the tactics and the roles to then execute something with that. And the whole point is they executed with a plan in mind of how we're going to swarm this guy and how we're going to flash him and then get in very quickly using the mobility of the pistols. And then we have very skilled players and we're going to send the right star players at the right point in the round to get the kills for us. And if we have 3 really skilled players all tapping away with a P250 on a guy's head who's semi-flashed and he has a weapon, we're probably going to win that fight even if he kills 1, even if he kills 2 people, right? And then we're going to get guns. So the key thing is you've got to have a thought process in mind. What I didn't like about how the overpowered Tech 9 and CZ rounds worked for second round buys is that it was very brainless, and it could just be we're just going to rush a spot and we're just going to spam around and we're going to see if we get a kill. That's not as good for me overall, and I'm glad that that doesn't exist. And I actually think this is very interesting as well because this whole aspect of getting the 2 AKs and full armor mean that now if you went with a UMP or you went with an MP9 like SK often have, if my player peeks on you and my player's Nico with an AK and a full armor and your player is whoever it might be, Fallen, Taco with a UMP and an armor, my player's not only got an advantage anyway by being a better player, he's got a weapon advantage. So I'm going to kill you more, fairly likely. And now your gun belongs to my team. And I've already started to even up the economic disadvantage of our buy. If you look at the collective equipment value, I'm kind of stealing your equipment value, right? So I think that that is an interesting detail to look at. But don't just look at what they did. Try and look for the reason behind what they did. Funnily enough, these are all great questions, some of these. Like, I actually could make Thorin's Thoughts videos on pretty much all these questions. Maybe I should. Maybe I should start using that as the way I use this Patreon. It would be a pretty cool idea, right? Some good questions here. Lief Rue says, are there any musicians or albums from the past 20 years that you would recommend? Holy fuck at this question, right? I realized one thing I actually had to learn in my life is because even when I was young, I was always interested in music. I would get music. I would re-listen to it many, many times. I would try to see what the parts that I wasn't quite getting. Was there something I wasn't appreciating about it? Was it more nuanced? Did I have to listen to it more? Try and explore other musicians. Then when I got a computer and the internet and I had a job where I worked online, I spent a lot of time exploring all sorts of different aspects. And this guy played in this other band, so I'd explore that band and go as deep as I can and listen to every album from them. That yes, okay, I'm essentially a music aficionado. And now I understand, I didn't realize this, but a lot of people not only just listen to chart music, they only listen if it comes on the radio or if it's on YouTube or something. And they don't follow bands, etc., or can't remember the name of every song on an album, etc. And so they don't really like music in the same way. In fact, I've met people who go, I don't really like music. And you go, what? I mean, there's definitely music out there you'd like. Nah, I'm just not that into it. That means they haven't explored it, you know, so fair play. So I will say, as an aficionado, this sounds ludicrous, because are there any musicians or albums from the last 20 years? There's loads. Like, I could literally list like 100 or more. I mean, the other thing is, I also, especially for the first like 10 years of being an esports journalist, explored so many genres. And one of the cool things is I had a friend, a guy who was actually a former pro, who we both were really into music in this way. And so we used to, as each of us explored in our own little area, we'd try and find something that we thought was not just good in that area and to us subjectively, but that the other person might enjoy. And we would share that. And so we were not only both like exploring out into our own worlds, but we were cross-pollinating. And so I was able to eventually, literally, enjoy music from almost every single genre that exists. Like the only ones that when I was initially getting into music, I would have probably said I wouldn't like would be stuff like, I would have probably said I wouldn't like metal, like death metal and black metal. But then again, I discovered Ulver and Arcturus and these sorts of bands and Layback. So guess what? I did enjoy those. And then I would have thought, I don't enjoy country music. Well, Clarence Clearwater Revival is fucking straight fire, isn't it? Or I wouldn't think I don't really like folk. But then I found Lauren, what's his name? Yeah, what is his name actually? Let me have a look. Who am I thinking of right now? Leonard Cohen, that's right. I don't know. I think it was Lawrence for some reason there. So Leonard Cohen, obviously. Current 93, probably one of my favourites of all time. Who else? Beck has that whole folk side to him, especially with some of those mixtapes that weren't like official albums that people don't know about. It's just fucking straight fire shit. So, yeah, it is kind of ridiculous, this question, because it would have to be its own video, wouldn't it? But off the top of my head, since you're saying past 20 years, so let me think. So we can go up to 1998 and onwards. So let's think everything from 1998 on. Well, okay, obviously we'll go ahead and say like pretty much everything from Boards of Canada, Aphex Twin, especially the first half of Square Pusher's career. Go with all of that. Then switch genres again. Let's go with like, well, first of all, I love drum and bass. So almost all the drum and bass I like is from 1998 onwards. I would say usually from like 2002 onwards. So Black Sun Empire, Calyx, TB, Stacker and Skynet. Who else? Polar. What else do we like in this shit? Break. Got to be one of the fucking best of all time. What a monster. Alaska. Absolutely outrageously good shit. Then we'll keep switching genres. Let me see. We'll go. See, this is the problem. Since I've got so many to name, I'm just going to be naming the names. And just, for me, what do you like? And just saying a name means nothing. You want to know why they like the person, right? So again, this should probably be its own video. Let's switch a few more genres. Hip-hop. Yeah, Kanye West. Love that shit. What else in hip-hop? Jedi Mind Tricks. Probably one of the most underrated is Lost Children of Babylon. I think there's a lot of great shit there. Who else do I like? Gangstar. We've got to go with them, right? What else? Actually, I'll have a quick look in the music folder. I'll give us a few to think of. Bone Thugs and Harmony. Aesop Rock. Ninth Wonder. One of my favorite producers of all time. What else? MF Doom. Fantastic. Then you've got all the hip-hop that goes more into like the chill hop, the New Jabez, DJ Okawari, Nomak, Uama Hiroto. What else have we got? Switch genres again. What should we go with elsewhere? I love post-rock. So we've got the Explosions in the Sky, Godspeed You Black Emperor. Grunge, there was a lot of great grunge. Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Smashing Pumpkins, I guess would probably be in that sort of area. What else have we got here? Jazz, a lot of that stuff, mainly new jazz, so Bill Laswell, Niles Petter Mulava, Cinematic Orchestra, Quantic, what else? I actually quite like some of the new metal just for fun. Linkin Park earlier stuff. Limp Bizkit, pretty fun shit. There's way too many in rock and pops. Like, yes, Led Zeppelin, fucking Moody Blues. I mean, half of these aren't from the last 20 years, are they? So I guess it's unfair to list those. What are a modern rock and pop? I guess there's not that much in modern rock and pop, really. I mean, Idlewild, they were pretty good. Interpol, post-rock, post-punk, rather. What about for more recent shit? Oasis, obviously, one of the fucking best of all time. Bridging rock and post-rock, Talk. They were one of the best. The Cure, some of their shit. Mainly the darker shit I like from them. So the Smiths, I guess that doesn't really count as it's from the 80s. It doesn't really make sense to list it. So Morrissey, there we go. There's one for you. Another classic. What else would be in here? It's trying to think what's from the rare season. Bjork. I mean, I don't like all of it, but she has some amazing shit for certain. The problem is it's too wide a topic, again, because it's something I've gone very deeply in. There's a lot of like Massive Attack, Tricky. Anything else in there? Nitin Sawhney, if you like that sort of shit, I'd definitely look into him. He's someone people aren't going to know as much. There's really too much. I actually like a lot of Amiga chiptunes, especially the work of Mac Tone. He was one of my favorites. Again, a lot of that's going to be like late 90s, so we're barely even getting under the fucking radar on that one. Boreal, all that shit, son. Boreal's one of the fucking best of all time. What else? We'll just leave it at that for now. Again, this should really be its own video. I don't mind people asking lifestyle questions. It is you guys' Patreon. But actually, this sort of stuff is probably better. Like, in the future, I will do this in the future. At the moment, I'm setting up this Patreon. I'm getting it rolling. I want to make sure I can deliver on all the rewards, make them a dedicated habit, therefore it's not strenuous to me, do all my work as well. And then, yes, in the future, I'll make a separate Patreon for my second channel. So people who are just fans of stuff to do with outside of esports and want to hear more of that and want to have Patreons where we can just go entirely into questions not about esports, wait for that one maybe. Like, ask the odd question now and then, but we can go into a lot more depth when I have that set up. Oh, and since he said from underground, I'll try and pick a couple that are way more underground. I mean, chiptunes are definitely very, very underground. I would probably say, if you like dance, like in the sense of like big beat and sort of like what used to be called techno, I'd look for someone called Evil 9. They had a lot of good stuff that a lot of people won't know about. Let me see. In drum and bass, I'll try and pick some more underground shit there. I'd say Alaska's pretty underground, very technical drum and bass. That's very, very sort of like old school in the sound makeup and sort of the timbres and the aesthetic, but very, very deep level and very nuanced. When you won't necessarily get it on the first hearing, but it's very, very good shit. As I said, Break has a lot of underground shit, despite being still a big name. I would probably say Decimal, a guy who's died sadly way too soon, had some very, very good stuff and was developing a really great aesthetic just before he died, sadly. I'd say go and check out, if you want actually some very melodic shit that people don't know much about in drum bass, check out Future Prophecies. They were really doing some pretty sick sort of tech step, dark drum and bass, but they sadly didn't do that much beyond that. Let me see. I think I'd probably highlight Polar, because again, he didn't get like the massive acclaim, but a very, very deep approach in the atmospheric side of things and techie in its own way. I'd probably say to check out, what else? I think some stuff from Tactile probably isn't that well known, but very funky, with sort of a jungle funk tone to it. SKC, in fact, a lot of great Hungarian stuff that a lot of people won't know because they're not the huge names. They're not the fucking, I mean, let's face it, most of the big names in drum and bass are either the old school, like late 90s, early 20s, early 2000s, like tech step people like fucking Ed Rush and Optical that I'm not super into, or it's the people who just do Liquid, and let's face it, Liquid is the most palatable stuff, or people who did techie stuff like Jason Status and Wilkinson, but then have also mastered doing, or Pendulum, and have mastered doing sort of like much more casual, half like trance and bass sort of stuff. In fact, I would actually say, by the way, check out some of Wilkinson's stuff that isn't on his main albums, and Jason Status's that isn't on the big albums that he did recently, but is the older techie stuff, the neurofunk stuff, because that stuff's a lot different, and it does cater to the old school roots to some degree. I love old school TB before he teamed up with Calix. He's still very good now in terms of technical ability, but he was so, like, the depth and the funkiness and the kind of soul in his music was so fucking cool, and he really was one of the people who mastered the craft, in my opinion. Let's go for a few other ones to give you some more underground. Okay, so in terms of post-rock stuff, I would say check out a group called Amina with 2 eyes. That's a lot of great atmospheric stuff that they did. No, I'm getting the wrong one. I'm thinking of Esmerine. That's it. Some of the people, actually, I think who originally were involved with like Godspeed You Black Emperor. Some really cool stuff that they did. I would say to check out Check out Tristeza if you've never heard of them. They're post-rock. One that almost no one knows because they only did a couple of albums. Was a group called Lift to Experience, I think from Texas. That was really cool shit. It was sort of like Christian in its imagery, and it was half folk rock and country, but it had that kind of like post-rock aesthetic and structure, which is really, really sick. Oh, in terms of jazz, I can give you a couple of cool ones. I would check out, I mean, I've already given you some. I'd check out Cobol. They're pretty good. How about Mahavishnu Orchestra? You've got to be more in sort of a prog mindset to enjoy that as well. I would maybe say Jonas Hellborg. He has some fantastic solo stuff. Jazzanova. I think they did some great mix albums if you want to find those. What else have we got here? I'll give you a couple more, then we're going to leave it at that. Okay, I'll give you one metal one that people won't have heard of. The guy who used to be the bassist for Tool on like the first 2 albums, it was part of a group called Lesser Key, which did like an EP. Like if you like Tool type aesthetic and music, it's right up there. It's that sort of stuff. It's not on the same level quite because they don't have the same musicians and haven't been around as long, but that was pretty cool, I thought. And we'll just leave it at that for now, shall we? I went way too fucking deep on that one, didn't I? Problem is I love music, so I do like to talk about it. I should make my own videos on that topic, though, probably for the second channel. Right, Lam Fu Kuong says... No, fuck. He was just responding to someone else. Florian Hagenbuch says... If you could rearrange the whole Danish scene, including Rubino... Now, by the way, Rubino isn't part of the Danish scene. I realise absolutely all those Norwegian players probably should play in the Danish scene, logically. But he's not really part of the Danish scene, is he? But he's shown he can, and he can, in theory, do it. I mean, Modi also has. Which 3 or 4 lineups would you put together, right? We'll skip this for now because I don't want to do like 2 or 3 lineups because I like to go in depth on why. So I'll give you one, which is if I could have all the players in the Danish scene and Rubino, and tomorrow I could make a lineup, I would make this lineup. I would put Glaive as the in-game leader, not least because what I've really been impressed with Glaive recently is not only has he switched focus on some of his star players over the time he's been in Astralis, and switched maps, even though I don't always like his pick ban, I actually would like him as the in-game leader, especially because I've noticed he has actually shown me that he can play a little bit more loose and can play around stars and temporary solutions as opposed to always going with the playbook. He's very different from MSL in that sense, actually. So I think he could work with more star players. So I would take Glaive as my in-game leader, and then I would have... I'd start with Device, obviously, because he's the best Danish player and his all-round skill set is so good. And I would have him be a hybrid AWPer again, but I'd have certain maps and halves that he always AWPs on. That's what I would do there. And I would have him rifle the rest of the time. I would have Config as a pure entry with Glaive, and he'd have an AK in his hands all the time. There's my 2 star players. I would probably chuck... Let me think, because this is the tough one. Because actually, I think for me, the next player is between Cajun and Dupree. Because Dupree can do a lot of roles, and he is a good player still, and he's burgeoning on being a star again oftentimes. But I think if you put Cajun back in a good system with Config and Device, he'll be an amazing kind of third role hybrid star, and he can both AWP and he can rifle in a way that Dupree hasn't shown us enough of the AWP to show me he can do that. So I actually might go with Cajun B there, even though I have a lot of respect for the career of Dupree and what he's been able to do. So I might go with Cajun B for that one. My problems with Cajun B is I do think he has more of a mentality issue, and that sometimes it's easier to break his mentality, whereas I think Dupree's got a bit of a stronger mentality. So I'll go with Cajun B for the sake of this one. Zipnik's got to have him. I do think Valde can give him a run for his money in the next years, but I'll take Zipnik's for now. And then in terms of my 5th player, let me see, how have I got there? No, that's it, right? Because I've got Device, Config, Cajun B, Zipnik's, and Glaive. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good fucking 5 right there. That could be a major winner. That could be the best team of all time. That could do everything. Like, unfortunately, dude, you can't ask me in an AMA where I'm going to try and answer as many questions as I can to give 4 full lineups. Because if I do that, I can just give you the names, but then it's not going to be very interesting, is it? Like that fucking music one that I probably did go way too deep on just saying the names of bands. So you can check them out, but it's not going to be as fun as if I explain why I like them, right? And then got passionate, and therefore you see that what it is that I might like about them. So just ask for like 1 or 2 lineups. So Paul Herman... I've got so many questions to go. I'll fuck this up, haven't I? I'm already 1 hour in. But I'll do... You know what? For this first one, I'll go as ham as I can. Paul Herman. In fact, actually, what am I doing? I don't even have to do all these questions. Next time, what I'll do is this. Next time, I'll get all the questions, I'll curate them, I'll put all the best ones at the top, and I'll put them in descending order of how good they are. And what we'll do is we'll answer all the good ones for like an hour, and then once we get to an hour, we'll cut them off, and either they'll make up another episode if I don't get as many questions next time, or they'll just have to not come in, and I'll just say, hey, submit another question. Paul Herman says, how do you feel about the esports industry's economic strength against another potential recession? I'm not sure if he means hypothetical recession or if he knows there's a recession coming, because I don't know that there's a recession coming. After the Great Recession in 2008, esports took a significant hit in terms of sponsorships, and the overall scene went through a bit of a dark period before League and CSGO started developing their scenes in 2012 and 2013. Now we have franchising in Overwatch League, NALCS, and LPL, and CSGO is bigger than it's ever been. How do you feel about the overall strength of the industry and potential to be resilient in another recessionary environment? Right, here's the thing. In a way, I like recessions. I don't like the fact that a lot of people lose their job and everyone makes less money, etc. But the good thing about recessions is they actually weed out the people who aren't giving you value for your money, people who aren't efficient with their money and aren't doing a good enough job to give value with their sponsorships and their craft, either as a journalist, a talent, or a player. And therefore, you weed out a lot of the people who were kind of just living high on the hog, just because there's so much flush money in the scene that you can sometimes blow money and waste money and you're not punished for it. So I have always thrived in recessions because my value in terms of how much I can produce and what I can do it for and the rates I charge make me one of the most valuable people in the scene, and therefore people don't blow as much money on other shit. With that said, in terms of how I feel like the strength of the industry is, luckily, I think these recessions, to steal a term from Nassim Taleb, one guy who I don't know much about economics, but when you apply his economic principles to society and other factors, I think he's a brilliant guy. I think that actually recessions have made esports and myself as a person anti-fragile. They've made it so that we've shown that they only strengthen us when we go into these bad periods or certain parts of the scene, which you then use as the foundation to build up the scene again when more money comes back in. So I feel like with crowdfunding and with game developers being directly involved and therefore making money from selling the game and then pumping that back into esports and making a feedback loop like that and that becoming part of the marketing of the game, I don't think that recessions will hit us as hard, because when that recession came in 2008, the only developer putting any money in the scene was Blizzard, and it was largely for World of Warcraft. It wasn't for Warcraft 3 or StarCraft. They weren't doing shit for those games. Counter-Strike had nothing from Valve. Quake had nothing from id Software except QuakeCon, which I'll give them credit for, they've always had. And so generally, we didn't have any real way for fans to provide the money or for game developers to give back. So I feel like the scene itself can't be hurt as much. I feel like as an industry, it's now bigger to the point where it won't actually be bottom of everyone's priority if a recession hits. So I don't really think it's as much of a concern. In fact, I could see it being a scene that will thrive where other things get hit by the recession, because in theory, it's such a cheap scene for fans to get involved with and even still for sponsors to be involved with. DT Shen says, how do you feel about the lack of Kongs that we have seen in other esports like CSGO or LOL? Now, by the way, Kong comes from Yellow, the great Zerg player in Brood War, who famously never won an MSL or OSL title, despite being the best Zerg in the world for many years and being like a top 2 or 3 player in the world, and definitely was good enough to have won those titles, where players much worse than him have won those titles at the same time and after his career, because unfortunately he often had nerve issues in big semis and finals, and players he could beat in other tournaments, including Boxer, would get the better of him in famous matchups where I Love Uv and people like Boxer would beat him in these key matches. So he's called a Kong, and that means someone who always finishes a runner-up and gets the silver medal, as it were. Now he's asking, how do we feel about the lack of them in esports like CSGO and LOL? Even in sports like tennis, there doesn't seem to be these cursed players, though you could argue Andy Murray was one such player. I'm curious about your thoughts on why StarCraft consistently produced these Kongs and how it seemingly embedded itself within that culture. Right, first of all, the problem with this thing is I actually don't agree with the premise. Therefore, at the end when he says, why did StarCraft produce them, and why it says it embedded in that culture, I don't think it actually is as much. Now, I will address that first of all, which is the reason why I think it's emphasized more in StarCraft and why it is to some degree embedded within Korean culture is because Koreans are very demanding and they accept only excellence in theory, and they will criticize you for coming second. In the West, you can come second and we will still say you had a very good tournament, you did very well. We'll call people legends who had many seconds and thirds and maybe only won one title or won no titles in their careers because they were legendary, they were great players, they did do amazing things. Look at the way Dan Marino is thought of in the NFL. He is still revered as one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And you can make your own case he's the best quarterback of all time. Doesn't matter, he never won the Super Bowl. It's not like that in other sports, and especially not in Korean sports, unfortunately. Now, in terms of why there aren't as many, I don't think there are. I think there actually are just as many, and in some cases more. Now, I will say this. First of all, when he says that in tennis, for example, there don't seem to be that many cursed players, right? There are many cursed players, because here's the thing. I don't think you stop being a Kong if you win once or twice. So for me, Stork, Fantasy and Jangbi are still Kongs, even though they won 1 or 2 titles over their careers, because they still failed the majority of the chances, and in many circumstances where they were favoured to win or could have won and didn't win, despite being so good, they probably should have won, and players that are worse than them won more titles. Like, as I mentioned earlier, I think that Stork is a greater player than Lleyton, but Lleyton has a lot more titles and isn't thought of as a loser in any way. Now, in terms of in tennis, I don't know if you just don't follow tennis that much. First of all, Andy Murray absolutely is a Kong, and for the same reason Stork is, because Stork lost the majority of his big finals to the greatest players of all time in Brood War. Go look who Andy Murray's lost the majority of his finals to. It's Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer. Now, for me, Roger Federer, I mean, like, we're talking like 7, 8 titles ago was the best player ever for me. And Djokovic has been the best player of the last 5 years, by far. So, for me, you're not a loser because you weren't lost to those guys. If you'd played 25 years earlier, you might have 7 Grand Slams. You might have more than fucking a whole bunch of really good players. Boris Becker, Stefan Edberg. So I think he's already a greater player than some of those guys. So I do think Andy Murray is a Kong. I also think elsewhere in tennis, there have been a few people who were kind of Kongs. Like, for example, for me, again, because they won titles early in their career before the people came along who could stop them, people like, I mean, one of the best examples ever for me is Andy Roddick. This guy only won 1 Grand Slam, but he actually played so well in some of those Wimbledons that if it wasn't Federer he was facing, I am certain he would have 3 Wimbledons. He would be so amazing. He has 0 Wimbledons, by the way. I think he was an absolutely amazing player. Likewise, the US Open, he would have a couple of US Opens. Maybe in the later years when the Australian Open became more of a fast court, he would actually have, oh, I guess it became a bit slower, but it was a hard court. I guess he could have had a couple there. So I think this guy would have had 5 or 6 if it wasn't Federer that was in his era. I think he was really hard done by in that sense. I think another guy who's an obvious one to me is Lleyton Hewitt. That guy had an amazing game. And around the years of like 2003 to 2005, was a fantastic player, a very consistent player. I think it was 2004, in like 3 of the Grand Slams, he just ran into Federer over and over again, and usually in like the quarterfinals. So it didn't look that impressive. But the dude could have been in the finals with a different bracket draw or facing anyone else. And he might even have won some of them if someone had beaten Federer, like a Djokovic. I mean, I guess that was too early for Djokovic. It would have to have been like Marat Safin or something. And then he could have won. I think also, actually, Marat Safin is a great example of someone who, to me, is a bit of a Kong. In fact, there's 2 players who I think are 2 of the most... Like, I think Marat Safin and David Nalbandian, or whatever his name is, the Argentinian guy, I legit think, in terms of talent as tennis players, they are top 10 talents of all time. But in terms of number of titles, Nalbandian, or whatever his name, Nadalbien, I don't fucking know. He won 0 Grand Slams. He won a World Tour Finals, but that's it. And he had such a great matchup against Federer. He really matched up well with that double-handed backhand that if he hadn't have had motivation issues and perhaps some sort of off-the-court issues and been a bit of a nutter mentally, I think he would have won a number of Grand Slams and could have really stopped Federer winning some of them. And I think Marat Safin just had such an amazing game that he was kind of like the G2 of his day. His ceiling was insane, and when he hit it, first of all, he did beat Federer on a couple of occasions, and he absolutely could have won more titles. He had a lot of motivation issues and massive off-the-court issues as well, when you consider how squeaky clean some of the pros are in the modern day. So I think there are a lot of Kongs there. You've really got me fired up on this one. Okay, it's a good job with that. In terms of the lack of Kongs in CSGO or League of Legends, are you fucking kidding me? In League of Legends, Katie Rolster has had a bunch of lineups that have made finals and never won an LCK. Go and look at Rock's Tigers. They are the ultimate Kongs of all time in League of Legends, because I actually think they were better than SK Telecom in the majority of seasons, finals, and worlds that they played in. I actually think that their team could have literally 2 world championships. They could have 3 to 5 LCK titles. They could basically be what SK Telecom is and have denied SK Telecom that legacy, but SK Telecom was more clutch, and therefore SK Telecom won more. Like, for me, I would compare those two as like SK Telecom with a Tom Brady who was super clutch and who made use of every little bit of their talent they had and therefore won the more titles, and deservedly so. But in terms of the Rocks Tigers, I mean, I guess this doesn't work entirely because until they got Peanut, they didn't have the more skilled lineup. But for me, in terms of as a team, I thought they were a better team at all times. So they are like the Peyton Manning or the Aaron Rodgers, or, yeah, we'll just go with those two, who I think are actually the better overall, but didn't win as much because they didn't necessarily always have every factor working as well around them, or they didn't have as much poise in the playoffs like Peyton Manning, who often threw a lot of interceptions and pick sixes in some key scenarios, or just got unlucky with his defense. And I actually think, yes, they had the potential to be better than the clutch player, but the clutchness is a very key factor, and the clutch player won out overall. So I think there were a lot of Kongs in League of Legends. You have to add in one of my favorites, Neo Blaze, and they were amazing second type team. Just they actually didn't get a lot of the finals because they got stopped by the second or best team themselves. Who else would we put in there? Oh, for the CSGO, let's list some of those, shall we? All-time Kongs in CSGO. First Very Games lineup. Let's go ahead and fucking chuck them in, shall we? They were amazing. They could beat everyone except NIP. Then let's go ahead and throw in the Na'Vi team with Guardian and Flamey. What an outrageously good team. Let's go ahead and throw in the Astralis team with Karrigan. Absolutely good enough to have won 2 or 3 majors, won 0 majors playing with him, but were amazing elsewhere. I know it doesn't sound like they can be a Kong because they won 5 titles, but the biggest titles, never won them. Never even made the final of a major. They are fucking Kongs. Would anyone else be in that group? Let me think. I think that's probably it for Kongs right now. Oh, maybe the first phase lineup that Karrigan had with Nico, where they only won the 1 title, and quite frankly, I think they probably shouldn't have won that one. It probably should have been Astralis winning from match point there. So they actually probably should have ended up with 4 straight silvers in a row. Then again, though, to be fair, I actually think they should have won the ECS title over SK. So I guess they should have had 1 out of 4 titles no matter what. But 1 out of 4, not actually that great overall when you're that good to keep making finals. So I think they're kind of Kongs in their own way because it's a very different phase lineup that later on won. I actually think phase right now, funnily enough, considering they won 3 titles, it sounds mad to think they could be Kongs. But if they keep playing like they have in the IM Oakland final, and they did in the major final, they could yet end up being Kongs, but from the back end where you win at the beginning and then lose a load of it beyond that. So I think there's a bunch of Kongs in these games. It's just not as famous. It's not as kind of ridiculed and scrutinized and put under the spotlight as other scenes and other teams are. I think in a very bizarre way, you could actually say Virtus Pro are Kongs. You know, Virtus Pro have been in like, I think it was like a record number of semi-finals and majors. They've won 1 major and been in 2 finals. And I know they certainly could have won 2 majors. That's kind of whack though, right? They are a little bit of Kongs in that sense. Alex So says, I recall on an earlier AMA, you alluded to your interest in flotation/sensory deprivation tanks. Could you please expand on your past experiences with them, the benefits they have provided you, and any personal recommendations you can give to others so they can get the most out of the experience if they decide to try it? What can I say on this topic? Like, the problem with this topic is, because it's in such a fringe, hippy-dippy realm of the world, way too many smart people have dismissed it and haven't investigated it. Therefore, you don't really have many sort of Sam Harris, Robert Anton Wilson, Ramsey Dukes type guys who've been into that area and can, in a very intelligent and nuanced, rational way, explain what they like about it and what's good and the benefits. And so you end up with a lot of kind of wacky shit accompanying it, which means that there aren't really a lot of things I can give you as like go-to sources. Like, for example, the books of John Lilly have some very interesting things in it, and some parts are very lucid, but other parts become sort of mystical and kind of Gnostic, and you have to kind of either eschew his personal idiosyncratic view of the world or just accept it as that's his experience and you can't take that much of it because it's not your experience. Or you've got people like There was a book on the topic that wasn't bad, but even then, I think he did that classic thing that journalists do when they haven't investigated a topic. It was Michael Hutchinson, I think his name was, who did a book, The Book of Floating, which had some interesting parts to it, but he wasn't an expert on the topic. I'd rather hear a book from someone who's done it for like 20 years or something, but is a Sam Harris type dude who would be very analytical, or an Eric Weinstein. So what I would say is, I got interested in them because I heard about John Lilly from Robert Anton Wilson, so I investigated that, read his autobiography, The Scientist, and then I heard about it from Joe Rogan as well, and so I went and explored it, found it very interesting. I would just say this, what I like about them is, I am already someone interested in not just the mind and what the mind contains, but specifically the unconscious and what could be termed as the imaginal realm. So just think of it as your imagination from now, because if someone says your third eye, second sight, you're already going to dismiss it because you're going to go, that's some wacky shit. But if you just say imagination, we all acknowledge that exists, right? My problem is people will say about the imagination, oh, that's just a bunch of random things firing in your brain, or that's just your brain making sense of other data it's taken in, or that's just made up, so it doesn't matter. No, let me make this clear. Look around your world that you are sat in right now. Maybe you're in front of your computer. So you have a computer in front of you. You have a keyboard. You have a mouse. You have the electricity to put into that computer. You are living in a house with lights, with artworks, with books containing amazing stories and experiences. You have a car, you have economics, you have social systems built up that are all imaginary. Either these things right now are imaginary that we all buy into, or you have currency, fiat currencies that just mean nothing in real life except what we agree they mean, which is all a big mental trick, right? Then every invention around you came out of someone's imagination. Everything that actually matters or means anything or is tangible and can do anything in your life either is like a relationship you have with someone that exists in your mind, or a relationship to something you like or something you appreciate, which is artistic expression, or an invention that came as the seed of an idea that all comes from the imagination. So why would you not want to investigate and explore your imagination? Now, what's great about a flotation tank is you might be worried, or you might be a person with a past history of mental illness or a predilection towards anxiety. And I wouldn't recommend that you go and take a 6-hour LSD trip, or take ayahuasca with some shaman who doesn't come from your culture, or try mushrooms and not know what to take from the experience, or even worse, sometimes maybe skew the experience by reading too many of other people's experiences. What's good about a flotation tank is when you get into it, first thing you have to do, like meditation, okay? When you do meditation, the first thing you need to master is your asana, which is your sitting position. You need to make your sitting position, whatever it might be, comfortable so you get used to it, so no longer does your brain obsess about the sitting position. Then you're going to focus on your breath. So you're making your brain focus on one thing, and in doing so, not focus on other things. Over time, you're not even going to be focusing on the breath as much. You're going to be focusing on nothing, and you're going to be allowing your brain to first of all relax, and then sometimes to allow it to naturally, perhaps it's the unconscious, perhaps it's the imagination, focus on other things and think of things. The sensory deprivation tank, flotation tank, is a shortcut to that process. Because when you get in there, you can't feel anything, you can't hear anything, you can't see anything, you can't smell anything, you can't taste anything. And once you get used to not bumping into the sides and lying still, you don't feel gravity in the same way. It's a quicker way to get your mind into a relaxed state where, unlike in meditation, oftentimes you don't want to allow your brain to go off into these thoughts. You do in this sense. And so what's great is it's like having a nap without going to sleep. That part of your brain which kicks in and gives you the dream kicks in while you're still awake. And so while you're awake, you can be observing, suddenly drifting off into, here's the thing, it's not even like when people say about dreams, that's just your brain making sense of the thoughts of the past day. I love the idea that people can just say that as though that's proven, as though we've been inside people's minds and recorded what their dream was about. And so, oh, look, you connect us to that. We have so little information on that shit, it's unreal. So what it allows me to do, in my sense, is to experience things from my imaginal realm, oftentimes that have no connection and I don't know where they come from. Can experience different lives in different worlds in a different scenario and be a different person and have different images flash up that could have been my life or someone else's life or a life that never existed. I have no clue. I don't question them. I don't judge them because I'm in that meditative state. So it's essentially a shortcut to a type of meditative state. state. Now, if that sounds interesting to you, maybe check it out. If you live in America, there's almost certainly going to be some vaguely near you. You can look online for them. Some countries sadly don't have them. I think it's a very interesting thing. It's the sort of thing where in the future, I'll probably just own my own, quite frankly, because I do get a lot of benefit out of it. I do it every week or two myself. I quite enjoy it. At the very least, once you learn to just not bump into the sides, it's very relaxing. When you come out, you feel like you've reset, as though you've scrubbed the mind, as it were, and you get to experience senses again almost for the first time, and it's a very pleasant feeling in that sense. And also, if you're tired, if you're overworked, it gives you a bit of respite without having to have time off and go for a full sleep. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Colger G says, what do you think? Oh, there's way too many fucking questions here. I made a mistake on this, haven't I? Should have done the thing where I timed. Right, well, maybe we'll speed it up a little bit. Colger G says, what do you think is hindering the German scene? They have a tier 1 in-game leader, I assume he means God B. So is it just a lack of talent, or have you spotted some mentality issues in the German scene which could be a problem? Right, first of all, I do think there's a lack of talent. There don't seem to be many good players in the German scene. I also think they hung on to players that weren't that good for too long, like Dennis and Spiddy, and allowed them to just waste everyone else's time instead of bringing up talents to the German scene. Then there are way too many cheaters in the German scene. Maybe more German players play League of Legends or something, or Overwatch, I don't know. Again, it's a mystery. I can't really know that. I'm not from Germany, mate, so I can't really tell you on a grassroots level what's going on. They do have a tier 1 leader in terms of God B. I actually do think that they should make up for the lack of talent with players from outside of Germany. Do they have mentality issues? Probably yes, because German scene, actually big right now is a great example, tends to be at its best when they have teams like God B's Mouse Sports in 1.6, or Blizzard's Mouse Sports before that, or the current big team where they play as a team. They play, you know, like the German national team does in football, where you play a system. But in doing so, you've either got to have very good role players, or you've got to have a couple of star players. At the moment, they have some role players, but they're not that good, and they don't really have star players, quite frankly. I guess Tabson counts as one. So you get Tabson, maybe you throw in a star player from elsewhere. If you added Tabson with, like, who do we want in this team? Cajun B and Oscar, and then you put in a role player and Godby, you've already got the makings of a pretty fucking good team right there, right? Dean Tanglis, one of my $100 guys, says, what do you think about North American League of Legends professionals who blame bad solo queue shots, bad scrim practices to why they are behind the Asians? Isn't the argument related to scrims very circular in a sense? Also, why don't NA pros just make their own rank S type system like CSGO has? Between the LCS and Academy teams, there's almost 200 players that could be a part of a system like this. Why don't they just make their own custom 5v5 games, pick captains, draft teams, practice hard, and even stream it for huge numbers? P.S. What are your favourite G Fuel flavours? Right, we're going to go quick because you've got a lot of questions here. What do you think of the North Americans blaming it, right? As the old saying goes, you either find a way or you find an excuse. And at the moment, they find an excuse, and unfortunately, that seems to just be a part that is built into North American culture. Everyone has a fucking excuse. It's why I think cultural Marxism is so successful in North America, in contrast to, for example, Russia or Japan or Korea. So why do you think they blame that? Yes, I agree that it's a circular argument. If loads of them are, if the same thing happens in CSGO, if so many of them are saying the scrims aren't very good in our game, but there's like 5 teams saying that, and yet they're the main 5 teams scrimming, well then you're part of the problem, not the solution, aren't you? So clean your own fucking room before you start criticizing someone else, right? Fix your own shit. You practice properly. You encourage someone else to practice properly. Change the culture in that sense. In terms of why they don't make their own rank S system, first of all, I agree. I always thought they should have had basically what I've called 10-mans in Counter-Strike, where you get the top players and you do these little mixed games. I think it would be better practice, because in theory, then you all play properly, and if someone doesn't, you kick them out of the system. They should have done that, but I believe that Riot actually might be stopping them or inhibiting them, because I know actually companies like Faceit, etc., I think wanted to do something like that for League of Legends, but for some reason couldn't. So I get the feeling that actually Riot stops them doing that, because remember, Riot's approach to League of Legends, at least in the past, was League of Legends is marketing for our game. So they want solo queue Challenger division to be where pros are playing, so that you can go, oh, if I get good enough to get into Challenger, I get to play with pros. They want pros to sort of be their ambassadors, which I hate, because if you're a StarCraft Korean pro or you're a top CSGO pro, you aren't an ambassador for the game. You don't have to play with plebs and have your practice ruined. And I know people like Frog, and that's why he famously had that rage moment where he got like minus 2,000 votes on Reddit because some asshole was ruining his game when he was trying to practice to get better, and this idiot's just trolling in his game. And so he got mad at him and raged at him, and the community were all like, you are so toxic. I once had a toxic guy in my game who was an asshole to me, and didn't understand that this is this guy's fucking job he's practicing for that's getting ruined. Plus, how mad is it that at a pro level, people are getting auto-filled and getting their role taken where they're like the best mid laner in the West, and they now have to play a game as support or top lane because some fucking clown who happens to be in Challenger, who's never going to be pro, gets to play mid lane instead. How's that practice for this guy? It's actually terrible. This is one of those areas where Riot's done a very, very bad job. Now then, what are your favourite G Fuel flavours? I've got a few. I actually don't think all the flavours are good. They're all nice if you get like the variety pack and you just have to have them once or twice. But some of them I did get quite sick of. So I'd probably say my favourites are... My go-to is always the fruit punch one. I think it's got a really nice aftertaste. I've actually just started enjoying one of the newer ones, the cherry limeade. I think that's pretty nice. I don't necessarily enjoy it, but that one that's like the sherbet one, that actually does taste good in a way. I'm not sure why though. It just maybe because it tastes sweet. Phaseberry's not bad, but I'm not a huge fan. I went off that. Lemonade's not bad actually. That's pretty nice. There's quite a few that are good. Blue Ice is decent enough. I think I would go. My top two would have to be Fruit Punch and the Cherry Limeade. Paul Herman, another question. Should people be allowed 2 questions? I don't know about that. Player trades in esports are pretty rare. Do you think franchising will bring about more trades? I think in Overwatch League we'll see them because of specialists. I do think there'll be more player trades. One of the problems is Overwatch League could have it because people are getting big rosters now. So I think you should do trades just to swap the contract and say instead of me having to break him with a buyout and then get a player, why don't we just swap players? I think that would make more sense in the future, especially now that you have more players on your roster. Now you can have like a traditional sport where you swap 2 lesser players for a good player and therefore give them the role players they need when they have too many star players. I think that could happen. I think Overwatch League is probably the first place it'll happen. Foxy says, which team in CSGO failed to live up to the hype the most? This is a tough one. We've got to go through all time here. Because the problem with that is you can go 2 ways. Which great team didn't live up to the hype and accomplish all they could, or which team was not that good anyway and was super overhyped and never lived up to any of it? Because if it's like super overhyped and never lived up to any of it, probably got to be like fucking big, right? I mean, they did almost fuck all as far as I'm concerned. And yet people were constantly talking about like they could do something at any point in time. Fucking hell. Will anyone fuck off? I think I'd also have to go with, let's go from the other angle, from very great teams who never delivered on their potential fully. Astralis, they should have won a major with Karrigan. They were so good for so long in that sense. I think you've got to go with G2, this G2 with Shox and Kenias. I think in part it's because they never emphasized Shox and Kenias as the superstar players. They should have had way more titles. More importantly, they should have had a lot more top 4s and top 8s than they did. And they should have potentially competed for a major, which they didn't really ultimately. So I think those are pretty obvious examples. Let's see if I can pick one more out. Let's go for another team that never really lived up their potential. No, that'll do for now. Inspector Norse says, I noticed you sometimes have a cough. I used to have a job where I talk a lot, and that gave me problems with my throat, and I would get a bad cough. Sometimes getting coughing fits that would lead to fainting/backing out. How do you keep your throat in check when making so much content and do events? I'm actually not very good at it, which is why I do get a cough and why I have to drink water all the time and why I do sort of have a dry throat a lot of the time and I do cough even though I don't have a cold. So I'm not very good at it myself, dude. So I can't really tell you in that sense. It is a problem. It's just what you call an occupational hazard of talking a lot. It's why actually a lot of people who are commentators don't do a lot of content on the side. Some of them have lost their voices and had doctors say, you have to stop commentating. And they're like, it's my job. I can't. So they just have to deal with it. And you hear people like Tasteless, whose entire voice has changed over like a 5-year span. So I don't know. I'll just have to deal with it, won't I? Von Doom. Although actually, I guess one way I could deal with it, which I will be trying in the future, is try to do more text pieces, because I do think that's an underrated medium, and I'm going to try and balance it out more like that. Von Doom says, what piece of media, be it literature, movies, music, graphic novels, do you think would benefit pro players the most, whether they're mentality, way of thinking, or other stuff? Okay, so the very easy answer for this one, because I've actually done this many times in my career. I've either recommended or as a gift given to players who I thought were like good players, but maybe didn't have the killer instinct or didn't have something pushing them to accomplish great things. I would give them pieces of either suggestions or as gifts, stuff like the movie Gattaca or the movie Rudy, movies that inspire you to go for everything, no matter what your problems are, what your limitations are, what's holding you back. I also like to give people stuff on stoicism, so stuff like the meditations of Marcus Aurelius or the work of Epictetus, because these are guys who teach you sort of a distance from reactive behavior and emotionally reacting to things and letting your emotions master you rather than you mastering your emotions. I think that's very key for people who aren't naturally very good under pressure and naturally aren't poised to use to overcome these things. Generally, it's more along those lines in that kind of a sense. I mean, I told a story on By the Numbers of how I gave Happy, the in-game leader of Envious, when he had his superstar lineup with Shocks, etc. I gave him the Thunderbolts run by Warren Ellis because it was about a guy trying to pull together disparate forces who didn't necessarily work together very well into a cohesive unit to accomplish a goal, which is what he was trying to do as an in-game leader in some senses. So generally it's more along those lines, but especially Stoicism and probably some Buddhism I think would help a lot of these guys a lot, especially some mindfulness. So maybe mindfulness in plain English by a guy whose name I'll never be able to pronounce. Whoa, Tough Guy says, I haven't heard anyone talking about Simple being toxic or comments on how long he lasts on teams for a while. Does he owe KNG a thank you gift? No, because I think actually, I mean, people like me and also all the other analysts sort of coming around, and then the fact that behind the scenes we haven't heard that about Simple for a long time means that he's gradually turning it around in that sense. I think KNG was just a different idiot who had a distraction that wasn't really that connected, but fair play. I understand why you asked the question. Sylvester Schmidt says, simple question, what are your thoughts so far in the Overwatch League? Personally, I think one thing they've done very well, they've been doing well, is all the content around it, i.e. the previews. Even though you can feel Blizzard is restricting them in some sense, while I still don't find the actual viewing experience to be that good just yet, content like Oversight, Watchpoint, and Sideshow's videos I enjoy very much. I agree. For a game that doesn't have that much appeal in terms of the esports side, it has an amazing content creation side of things. I'm very sad actually that people like Harsher and Flame have been hired by teams and therefore can't just make a living from content. But I can't blame them because they weren't in a position to make a good living from content, sadly. So that is a problem. I do think it has good content, way better than some other games around it, way better than CSGO, for example, especially if you remove my content. I actually think in general all the stuff around the Overwatch League is pretty cool. I agree the viewing experience isn't up there with some of the other games. Problem is I don't know if it ever can be, but I also think the viewing experience is underrated. Like, people go way too far still claiming it's unwatchable, oh, there's nothing to enjoy about it. Then dude, you know what? You're not me, so I can't relate to you, because if I watch like the New York Excelsior play against some really good Western team, I think it's fun as fuck to watch Jonak and to watch Sabiel B do some amazing shit, and then to watch fucking someone like Fletter from Soul Dynasty, or to watch someone like, at the moment, Dream Casper on Boston Uprising straight carrying. I think that's fun as fuck. It's Soon from the LA Valiant. Obviously, there's some amazing players, and if you just focus on, here's the thing, stop looking at teams, stop looking at the overall game, start focusing on star players, find a star player you like and follow his career, and then maybe from there you can expand out and find other shit you like. If you don't, just watch that star player. It's still fun. Jakob Wochas, so I don't know if this guy's related to Taz or not, says, what do you think about the idea that CSGO teams should have bigger rosters in real... I've already had this one already. But fair enough, dude. I already answered your question. Daniel Yordanov says, number one, try not to ask too many like three-part questions, guys. There's a lot of questions to get through here. So in future, I'll just pick the one from your three-part that I think is worth answering. So let me see what his questions were here. Let me see. In a very layman comparison, Western Dota 2 teams seem to be doing a lot better overall than Western League of Legends teams. What factors contribute to the relatively even spread of championship teams between East and Western Dota 2? Number one factor, and the factor that all Dota 2 analysts will ignore and even downplay or try to deny. And this is why I have to exist, because otherwise in esports, there will be bullshit hive mind narratives that will never be overcome. Number one factor why there are more championships for Western teams in Dota Dota 2. And here it is, guys. Korea has never fully embraced Dota 2 and put its industry around it and gone super ham on it. If they had, they would have the most championships in Dota 2, they would make China have less, and they would make the West have a lot less. Great. I've just said the emperor's got no clothes, right? Don't give a fuck. Now, also, you have to add in, Chinese teams tend to be very stubborn. They played way too long around the carries. They also have made roster moves that sometimes don't make sense. They've also had that whole scenario of like streaming contracts and then swapping roster and people retiring after good TIs. That's meant that they haven't had the same longevity of the same rosters and cores as some of the Western teams, like with Evil Geniuses and Eternal Envy's teams and Alliance, etc. and Na'Vi. They also... Dota 2 is a game heavily affected by the meta, and therefore when there's massive meta shifts, sometimes you just can't win. I also think that the fact that it's so competitive means that TI like tournaments are more of a crapshoot, whereas the rest of the scene is much more stable. So I think it's more just along that lines. What would Thorin's ideal to... Also, you have to add in... No, there's nothing to add in. Oh, final detail. They also obviously play against Asia all the time, whereas in League of Legends, they don't. What would Thorin's ideal two Danish team... We already did that one. What has kept Italy and Spain, bar minor exceptions like Lucifron, Sturmy, Mythi... Let's go ahead and do and immediately add in Expecate to that mix. Away from the esports landscape in comparison to Germany/France or other countries from mid/southern/eastern Europe. Right? I don't think France has actually had that many. It's mainly had them only because of CS Source, very small scene, and then the CSGO, they just had some amazing teams, and crucially, they had a bunch of star players and tactical styles early on, so they had the in-game leaders to make the difference. Then you got to add in that actually France, internet-wise, used to be in a similar spot to Spain and Italy, but not as bad. Italy and Spain, for the first maybe almost 10 years of esports, had appalling internet, not only appalling internet residentially, but more importantly, appalling routing from their country to other countries, which made it way harder to qualify for LANs, which made it way harder to be competitive online, and meant that you had much more of just an internalized scene. Then, I'm not sure... Like, this is, again, I'm going to have to speculate, aren't I? But I believe that actually, if you ever look at stats on countries and people who work the least, I think Italy and Spain and France, actually, are some of the countries that have people who work the least and tend to be what I guess Westerners who aren't from those countries would say is more lazy or want more time off. I also happen to know that in terms of like Italian and French culture, there are a lot more people who are like genius talents who just waste their talents and have too many off-the-field problems where they're just partying too much and don't apply themselves as much, whereas people in general from some other countries tend to be a bit more dedicated in that sense. Problem is, again, it's a very complex topic, but I've given you a quick breakdown there. Thomas Pasquale, what happened to UK CS and why has it never reached the top level? Oh Lord, that's like a 1-hour video in itself. I remember quite a healthy CS LAN scene in the UK 2000 and 2005 with teams like Four Kings getting even international recognition. I was an admin on Enemy Down. I'm just going to skip this part because generally, okay, I get the point of your question. Let me think. Right, okay, first and foremost, I did an AMA question on this. See if someone can find it. I'll see if I can find it myself and link it in the description where I addressed this. Basically, first and foremost, in the UK, internet in universities was very bad, or it was limited in terms of ports for gaming. So people couldn't game once they went to university. And in the UK especially, people are still brainwashed, like America, to believe that everyone who can, because of their grades, should go to university. And then they made the university grades easier to get in because they made the fees worth more. And so there was a whole cottage industry, I guess it's not a cottage industry, is it, of conning people into going to university who don't need to go to university, who should in fact go and learn trades. And therefore, so many players at age 18 who were talented went to university and could no longer play for 2 or 3 years and retired, or only played certain LANs if they were really talented. So already you were stripping out a lot of the talent. It's the same thing that happened to Finland with the army, where it meant that people had to skip the army, but at least you could defer that for a while. Then you got to add in, Four Kings had an amazing sponsorship which they squandered for many years, and famously, people like Harriman and Mangia Capra had a hegemony where they stayed on top of the scene, worked very little, used to even brag internally that they didn't practice much but got a 6 salary and could still do okay at events. So they didn't try to be the best themselves and practice properly. They purposely didn't practice so that the second and third best teams in the UK couldn't get on their level and couldn't develop. Then, if anyone started to get dangerous on those teams, they would strip them, by strip mining the talent because they had much better contracts, much better money, and they were the top teams and would qualify from the UK qualifiers. And therefore, they successfully kept the UK scene down for half a decade or more. Then in the latter half of the 2000s, CS Source came along. All the young players in the UK scene were playing CS Source instead of 1.6, especially because you didn't have the Four Kings type salaries anymore. And so CS Source became the game. And guess what? UK teams were pretty good in CS Source. They were probably like the third best nation overall, admittedly a way smaller scene. So actually, I think that's fairly reasonable overall. I think there's a lot of factors go into it, but there's the quick version. Thompson, what are your thoughts on double AWP setups in CSGO? I think they're overused. I don't think you should use them generally unless you've got very good hybrid players or very good players in general. You shouldn't have support AWPers in a lot of cases unless it's on a specific map or half. I also think on CT side, they're way overused because they gamble too much for your economy. I know why people take the gamble, because the gamble can pay off. There's a lot of variance in it, because if you have a double AWP setup, the good thing about an AWP is you can sometimes kill 2 or 3 people who come in the site without dying yourself. Way harder to trade like that with a rifle if you're one player. So the odds are you can hold the 2 sites without rotations as much. You can just play straight up. You don't have to gamble a rotation. Also, you can hold one site with an AWP while someone rotates off. So you can gamble and load up on the other site. So I know why people do it, but I think they do it way too much. I think generally I'd rather only see double AWP setups myself on T side because you can actually create a lot of interesting picks. And generally in CSGO, because I do think the AWP is still very nerfed beyond what it should be, I think you should only run one AWP, and I think you should only run one AWP when you've got the right player or the right circumstances for it. It's too expensive in a game which rewards low economy approaches and buys. Jaws Boomshaws. In the early years of esports, many games have had their time in the spotlight, but most eventually died down after a number of years. CS is among the few games that have been around for more than a decade. In your view, what do you think will be the eventual longevity of CS in esport? Will it stay around for 10 years, blah, blah, blah? Will it stay? I'm so fucking tired already in this one, but I'll keep trying to soldier on. Let me think. What do you think will be the eventual longevity? The good thing about CS is it does a very good job, unlike League of Legends, of bridging the gap between a game that's very casual and can be appreciated on a very casual level, but very in depth and has a lot of depth and can be appreciated on a very deep level, but simultaneously. So that's why I think it will always occupy a unique spot in the scene. I also think with crowdfunding and with skins, etc., it can self-sustain for many, many years. So it might end up being one of those games that never dies out if they do a good job of porting it to new engines and updating it, etc. I think it could be around a long, long time. So I won't go ahead and say it will die. I don't know if it will actually. It has one of the best chances of any game I've seen to continue maybe forever. Unless esports itself just dies. What do you think kept it viable? Well, that's one of the key factors. Then there's the fact that it has very simple concepts that can be applied, but it also has a lot of areas of depth where you have to learn. The pro scene, because of the depth, means essentially you never get bored of watching the pro scene. There's always the changes in roster and changes in meta and changes in maps that keep you interested. And then there's the changes in matchups from the context of what happened last time those 2 teams matched up that keep it very, very interesting. We have the pick ban veto. We're actually developing new formats that I think are better than some other games. I think it's got almost every factor going for it in general. Shakez says, this is a question about Team Liquid. The problem is it's about Stanislaw leaving and adding Steel, and it's before NAF joined. So I'm not going to answer this one right now, mate, but I'll answer it in a video at some point about NAF and Team Liquid. Matthew Zerwick says, I imagine what you do for work comes up in conversation and that it has come up for 10 plus years. Esports has changed a lot in that time, as has your popularity and income, I assume. How do people react to what you do for work, and has it changed much over time? People actually very rarely ask me what I do for work because I'm not really someone who's a super social person, so I tend to only meet people in kind of small talk scenarios or people who already know me from esports because my life is esports. So I don't really have that come up very often. Remember, my job is esports, my hobby is esports. When people ask, I tend to tell them that I'm a journalist or that I work as like sort of a sports analyst or commentator, but for video games. And I describe it in a cool way. I go around the world, I attend tournaments, I analyze the top games, and it's a lifelong passion, and I make above an average living doing so. When you tell people those things, it's a pretty cool job, right? As opposed to the days where you made $9,000 and worked 80 hours a week, and every cunt in the scene called you a nerd and a borderline pervert for liking the game. Brilliant times. Michael Allaire says, what would be your ideal major qualification system? I like the minors, but I would have the minors lead into a qualifier again, not the major. And I would have Personally, I would have more minors. I would have, as I mentioned in the video, I would have a CIS minor, but I'd have a South American minor, and I'd have a Nordic minor as well. And I would have whatever I'd have different slots based on which minor it was. It would all lead into a mega qualifier. From the qualifier, I would actually have something like 8 teams qualify, and the 8 teams that actually get to the major would just be the top 8 teams in the ranking. I would say a month before the major. So I'd have the qualifier 2 weeks before the major or a week before the major, and a month before the major, top 8 teams in the ranking, which Valve can decide the ranking if they want. They just get invited to the major, and the rankings would be based on how you did in tournaments since the last major. If you won tournaments, you consistently placed a high ranking, ELO perhaps based on beating teams, etc. That would be my general system. Then when we get to the qualifier itself, I would personally have it be seeded into GSL groups with best of 3 for all the matches, and then whatever, top 2 teams in the 4 groups go through. Right. Alex Adams says, we're getting close to the end here, I'm not doing bad, almost 2 hours. What do you think is the optimal balance between monetizing and growing esports brands and keeping the scene from being overly corporate in nature? Right, I'll just go ahead and say at the beginning, I don't know what optimal balance means. Like, what, am I the god of the scene now, or some tyrant who can tell companies, you can't make more money? Sorry, mate, stop monetizing, stop growing your brands. We need to leave it exactly right there in a stasis because I enjoy the current scene, don't want it to grow. I think that's an unrealistic premise. So I understand why you're asking it as like a general, like, what should we do? What's a great premise? What's an abstract concept for the scene? It's just, it's not realistic. Then when he says, I've seen many people lately that are upset at perceived money grubbing that some organizations have been accused of, such as the Facebook streaming controversy. Now, that isn't money grubbing. Actually, what's great about that, this is what is still not understood by most people, is, do you like Twitch? Is Twitch your favorite broadcaster? Personally, YouTube's my favorite broadcaster because I don't care about Twitch chat. I actually can find the streams. I'm not half-wit, and I enjoy actually the YouTube player better than Twitch. But I definitely think Twitch is top 2. Now, of those top 2, do I think Facebook's very good? So far, Facebook doesn't seem very good. Is it as bad as people say? It's only done 1 or 2 events. Now, would I like to watch tournaments on Facebook? Not really, but would I like to watch tournaments on Facebook if it means that broadcast rights become a hotly contested topic and people like Twitch have to start paying for the broadcast rights and therefore sometimes are willing to pay more for broadcast rights? They get the broadcast rights back, but they've now paid the tournament org. Tournament org can make more money, can sometimes not just have to break even or lose money, and can actually make money from events, and therefore the whole scene grows. I would absolutely pick to have Facebook stream some events if that's what happens. Therefore, I don't think there was any money grubbing there. And the people who are saying money grubbing, fuck anyone who says money grubbing when an event is losing money on events and they want to now break even or make money. That's not money grubbing, you halfwit. I'm not calling you a halfwit, Alex Adams. I'm just saying that a lot of people who are saying that are ignorant and don't know what the fuck they're talking about. It's like saying, you're greedy. Why? Because you want to make more money than the cost for parts would be for being a plumber. You want me to pay you money on top of that? No. And if the only way I could do it is to use parts from one company instead of the most favorite company, then I'd do that. And then he says, even in traditional sports, the debate is still had with things like advertisements, etc. Now, I think that's just pathetic American culture. You know what I love about American culture? I should do a video about this on my second channel. They brag all day long about their freedoms, and then they lack basic freedoms that other countries have, and that other countries have, which are capitalistic freedoms, which America doesn't have because of Puritanism and I would call sort of like state-controlled market capitalism, which doesn't allow basic freedoms of a free market that they then brag about having. Like, for example, you can't play online poker and gamble in America. You can't have advertisements on your NBA jersey. Even though you can in other sports, in other countries, you can gamble online. So I find it actually quite fucking laughable. They brag about those freedoms, and that's even suggested as something like, should we be allowed that? Well, yeah, obviously. What's the problem? Where would you draw a line for an event's broadcast? I mean, I've kind of stated it right there, right? It's up to the event. It's their event, mate. Alexander Rao says, I think how many questions I've got left. Fucking hell. Right, I'm going to go quicker through some of these. Alexander Rao. Have you noticed any interesting trends in the fan base for League as time has gone on, like a large increase of maturity as pro players in League have matured? For example, Reginald actually talked to you even when you were criticising him. Also, how much research do you do about a player before calling them a trash can? Cheers. Right, okay, let's look at the first one. Have I noticed interesting trends in the fanbase for leagues? Gone like getting Chris and Mercury? No. Here's the thing, okay. Just as I don't think commentators have gotten exponentially better, like Froscoren and Dervisha. Yes, they've improved, they've leveled up, but really they've been honing and grinding away at like 5 or 10% improvement max. The reason people think they've gotten much better is people have themselves adapted to those commentators and analysts and gotten to know them better and their idiosyncrasies and to appreciate the nuance of what they're doing. That's where it seems like the scene's got more mature, but it hasn't. Because if a new person comes along, as you're seeing now, they will get the same hatred like DK does, Jacob Wolf does now, gets the same hatred me or Richard would have 10 or 5 years ago. And the same things repeat over and over again because the scene stays 18 to 22 years old and the new people come along and repopulate and they're new pleb, idiot, naive morons who have to learn the same lessons over and over again that we wouldn't if this was a sport where the average age for the viewers went up and up and up and we had lots of 28-year-old viewers who were more nuanced about the world and more mature. Now, as pro players in the league have matured, I don't think they really have. I think Reginald as a human has matured, sure. I also think the underrated aspect that no one mentions, but Reginald himself told me, was that one of the main reasons why it made sense for him to work with me is because I am now a very influential person. In fact, they call us influencers if they're people who are on teams. We are people who can influence what the community think and whose content influences what the community can think. So it is now of overwhelming value to Reginald and other people to be involved in that content and have their say to my platform and my audience and not have that locked off and be antagonistic towards me. Therefore, when I then wreck them, I might wreck them a little bit harder and then they're feeling unduly or unfairly done by. So it makes more sense to have a cooperative relationship, a collaborative relationship, and that is the main thing that they learned. That's why I don't actually blame Reginald entirely for blacklisting me, because at the time I was not a massive figure in the same way. I didn't have my own control over my own channels, my own influence. I worked for other people and I wasn't as big a deal and didn't have the same YouTube channel. So I wasn't as much of an influencer. I was never mad at him for blacklisting me. I was mad at him for unfairly applying that to my website and basically pressuring the job of a friend of mine, Travis Gafford, and potentially putting that guy's livelihood in danger since Travis is a bit of a lazy fuck. That's the one thing he did in the game at the time, as opposed to expanding out and doing stuff that doesn't cost the money of a cameraman. You'll know what I'm talking about, Travis. Fix up, bruh. Then the part about how much research do I put into a player called calling him a trash can, right? First of all, I only call people trash cans generally in either opinion piece videos where I add a little bit of my persona, Twitter, which is entirely my persona, is basically a character I play, and then the desks where it's a character I play and I ham it up even more because I play a certain role to balance out the desk of all the goody two-shoes good guys who praise everyone. So I will call someone a trash can if I just watch him and think he played like shit and I haven't seen him ever play good. Do I have to research him a lot? If in my serious work I was going to very seriously criticize someone, first of all, I wouldn't call them a trash can. And secondly, I would put in either they haven't done anything relevant, therefore I'll say haven't looked very good, or if I was going to very heavily criticize them like Smiths, I would look into them quite a lot and then I would match my strength and appropriateness of what I say based on how much research I've done. AHQ says, any plan to do a full overview on the history of Quake as esports? And he basically says that, you know, because of some of my other content, I could do a lot of videos on this. In general, I want to do more content series that are exploring key topics or phases from esports history. Again, it's going to be about how much time I can get from my other content. Admittedly, at the moment, I still sometimes struggle with the balance of how many videos do I do that are disposable, like a roster move just happened, that will be very successful, and how many do I do that are more enduring pieces, but maybe not loads of people will watch them. Now, it's not that no one will watch them and that in-depth content isn't appreciated as much. It is in its own way. It's just it takes a lot of time, and that won't financially be rewarded in the same way. But you know what? I have a Patreon now. I have other sponsors, etc. So in theory, I can do these things. I want to do them more in the future, and let's hope I can, because yes, I agree that would be more important, but a crucial step is going to be getting my own website, because I've already done a lot of this content. You guys just can't find it, because if you just Google Thorin and something, you're not probably going to find this. So when I have all the links, you'll be able to find it directly. Right, Jake Petrucci. Let me see how many more questions I've got. Jake Petrucci says, what is it about MOBAs that find so much success in the Asian region? What could the CSGO team or community do to increase popularity in Asia? Just simply more promotion, or is there a cultural difference we need to overcome? Right, first of all, I think that Asians in general seem to like team games more because they like the social phenomenon of games. Like, what's very interesting about China is how heavily marketing seems to affect things. Likewise, in Korea, it's all about what are the 3 games we're all playing right now? What's the mobile game we're all playing right now that we saw advertised on the Seoul Underground or is being shown on GameNet? That's what people play. They don't just play every game and have an even distribution. Like in the West, people just play the game they're into generally. It's not as obsessive about one game. So I think there's a lot of hive mind approach over there. I also think that they generally like fantasy games. You look at anime and manga, they're way more like fantasy and crazy themes and aesthetic, whether or not the story's about that. Therefore, I think MOBA appeals to that much more than Counter-Strike, which is a bit more bland and everyday. Or I guess Quake has the fantasy aspect, but it doesn't build up the lore aspect, and it's not really different because every character was the same. It's just reskinned. So again, doesn't have the same differences. I know Quake Champions changed that, but then again, Quake, because the developer isn't a game pushed over there very heavily, and it's a single player game generally. Pavel Rozvora says, what are some misconceptions that fans/outsiders have about the behind the scenes events for talent players organizers? Okay, first and foremost, they would never understand how many players and talent interact, have fun, and are even friends at after parties and outside of the game settings. Like, there are players who I am massively critical of as players, because when I analyze them as players, I'm only analyzing them as players. And when I interact with them with my public persona, Thorin the persona is interacting with them. I, as a human, am often not interacting with them, except rare occasions where maybe I say, get well soon, or sad to see this player has been fired when I think he's a good player. That's the rare times I maybe let the character slip. What people would not know is the amount of times, I won't say the nature of them, because I think it should be kept private unless the player wants to reveal them. I have sent DMs to players who've just lost a tournament or who are going through hard times, and maybe publicly I'm very critical of them and I explain that they're a shit player right now and that they should have been cut, but privately I explain to them I hope that they can get back into a top level, or, you know, things along those lines that I won't go into in more detail. And this doesn't have to be known. Again, for me, we're all part of a show. They have to play in the server, we have to provide the analysis and provide some of the drama outside of it, and collectively we're all putting on a great show for everyone. And we're teammates in that sense, even if at times it seems like we're antagonistic. Fisu says, do you have a hierarchy between different esports and on what theoretical basis? You evidently focus on some over others, and this can't be a matter of random preference or popularity alone. In other words, what makes something a good esport? Right, generally, obviously I go entirely off my own subjective appeal. But what makes things a good esport for me is, first and foremost, it should be a very hardcore game with the opportunity for a lot of individual and team depth, and as a result, hopefully, strategical and tactical depth. So Counter-Strike, Brood War, they're the main games that occupy that. It should have the ability for casual players to enjoy it on some level. Counter-Strike, again, really succeeds in that sense. League of Legends massively succeeds in that sense, but not as much as people think. And Quake obviously massively succeeds in that sense. I also think that ideally it should have more styles open to it, so it's not as limited. I don't like MOBAs that, for example, limit you based on some meta switch. So if you're an amazing player on these 5 things and at this role, your role gets fucked and then your champions get nerfed. I think that's really lame, actually. I don't like that. At least in Dota, you can work around it because everything's OP to a degree. I think that's kind of cool. So generally, yeah, League of Legends is not a very good esport. Overwatch is not a good esport in terms of the viewing experience overall and some aspects of playing it, like all the game modes. Quake, not a very good esport in terms of just not as popular. Counter-Strike, probably the best esport in that sense. League of Legends, good esport for casuals, but not as great an esport for the actual depth of the game and how good you can be individually. And then in terms of how I pick between them, I go purely A, on my subjective judgment, so I do stuff in the games I'm interested in. Then I balance it out with other games that I've put effort into and my skill set can do good work in, even if it's not as in-depth as my other games. And therefore, I have a career, I make a living, I spread around my talents, and I can get to do both what I want to do, what can make me money, and all at the same time. And even within the field where I'm doing what will make me money, it's still generally topics I'm interested in, things that spark my interest there, and I have my own approach, which if you've seen in my reflections with myself, you'll know I have my own interests and how I can get interested in a game that I don't necessarily like that much as a game. Luke Farrell Evans says, given its sedentary nature and association with sugary energy drinks and unhealthy snacks, should we be concerned with the negative physical and mental health impacts that video gaming can have on its young player base? Yes. Nobody should be displaying obsessive or addictive behavior towards video games or anything else in their life if it is not somehow beneficial. The reason why, if you are semi-pro or pro, it is now okay for you to be obsessive and addictive in some sense, is because you have now not just taken the time you have for a hobby, say a third of your day, and applied it to esports. You are now taking the time that your work would take and apply it. So you can now do twice as much. I think if you are below the semi-pro level and you're just doing it for fun, it should only be occupying 3 or 4 hours of your day. Shouldn't be more than that, because you need to balance out your life with work, with school, with being healthy, with having other activities, social activities. Now, don't go too far the other way. I don't like people who are like, I want to be social and not be on the computer. Fuck off then, mate. Because that actually does, underneath it, have an anti-intellectual current that goes with it. So, for example, people who don't play video games but spend 4 hours reading books a day, I think that's pretty cool. Then again, if you spend 10 hours reading books and you don't over-exercise, I don't think you're experiencing a human vehicle very well, not living up to your potential. And I think actually you'll be very neurotic because you'll be too isolated in your mind and you won't work out the kind of physical hormones and pressures to have a balanced lifestyle. So I think everyone should go for some kind of balance. But if you make your career into your hobby, yes, you can double up the time you spend there. And I don't really care about the energy drinks and unhealthy snacks part. I think that's a separate issue. I think you can overcome that and still be very invested in esports or computers. Peter Corduan. Do you think violent games like CS and Dota will make it into the Olympics? And do you think this is necessary for legitimizing esports? Will they or won't they? I think probably they will eventually, not least because I think the Olympics will become less relevant over time. Therefore, it'll hasp a grasp for anything it's got. Do I care? No, don't think it's relevant. Don't give a flying fuck. Do I think violent games? I don't actually think Counter-Strike is violent in any way. I mean, when I play it, I don't get any sort of thrill out of killing someone. I don't think of it as killing someone. I think of it as I've removed their chess piece from the board for a round. It's coming back next round with different abilities or skills, and I'm going to combat it again. And they have abilities and ways to combat me, and I have ways to combat them. They happen to be weapons. They happen to be economy. They happen to be tactics. But I don't really, I think of them as more abstracts than I think of them as the specific aesthetic of what's happening. I remember, we could just make a Nerf version of Counter-Strike. So you don't die, you just get hit with a Nerf plastic dart, and the rule is when you get hit with it, it's like cops and robbers, you've got to fall down and pretend to be dead and you come back next round. Would that make it any different? No, it would be an identical game, but it wouldn't be violent, right? Also, it's not violence because it is purely fictional. There's no violence happening. There is no physical violence occurring. Is it violent to read a book in which it talks about someone being killed? It's not really violence, is it? It's a vague simulacrum of violence, and it's just an imagining of violence. And guess what? There's actually a fun, perverse pleasure as to why we like to experience and read about that violence, but would absolutely abhor and disgust and be repulsed and traumatized if we ever were actually faced with that very same violence. I think what's made that series, which it's not a mega series, I think people have overrated it, but it's a decent series, Mindhunters, interesting, is that when you watch it, you get to experience the serial killers, but you experience them as people and the pressures and the stresses on them. You don't see them as this monster who's this killing force who you can't even conceive of as a human and is totally unrelatable. You see actually, and by the way, you get interested in how they murdered and what they were thinking of, but if you were ever there at the murder or being murdered by them, or you were committing the murder yourself, it would be fucking horrific, and you couldn't do that because you're not like those people. So I don't think it's violence in that sense, and I think to continue to label that was first of all a media narrative by fuckers like Jack Thompson, but was also it's just a misunderstanding of what violence and what art and expression is about. Fucking hell. We're almost there, boys. There's 5 left. Daniel Hambreus. Listening to people that are good at articulating thoughts is great, no matter their opinions. Do you have any favourite people with very different opinions than your own that are good at explaining your thought process, their thought process? First of all, I agree. Listening to people who can articulate their thoughts is great, no matter their opinions. Absolutely. That's why on my talk shows, my favourite guests are people like LS, Launders, Veteran. Who else would we go with? Sponge. Now, some of these people weren't pros. Some of these people don't have opinions that go close to the consensus, but they've all gone down their own little path, and they've all built up their own model of the game, and they've all got interesting and articulate thoughts that they can convey to me. Now, there's a lot of pro players are geniuses in the game, can't explain what they're doing. There's a lot of pro players have great insights on the game, can't express them because they don't want to give credit to someone. They don't want to talk about things. They don't want to reveal certain things. I'm way more interested in those people, even though I disagree with them on many, and in certain cases, almost everything they say about the game. Now, do I have favorite people with very different opinions? As I explained earlier, I don't know many people with the same opinions as me. There's a few people like Lurpus who I've worked on some ideas with, Richard, and therefore we've collectively sort of progressed an evolution of thought, a chain of thought. So we have similarities, but we still diverge. In terms of, as I've just said, you've just said favorite people. Okay, I've just listed some esports people. Kelsey Moser would be another one. But I would also go, and one of my favorites of all time, a guy I'll probably make a video about, is a really old school guy, was a guy called Onslaught, who I think was actually revolutionary in his innovation of thought, decades ahead of the esports industry on some of his ideas. And I don't know how he was so prescient. He literally could have been some John Titor-like scenario who came back in time. That's how amazing some of this guy's thoughts were. In that sense, he's on like a Marcus Aurelius level. Like, how was the guy back then having these thoughts? Do I have any famous... Okay, I'll give some non-esports people as well. I really enjoy listening to Sam Harris's thoughts, even though, yes, sometimes he goes down intellectual cul-de-sacs I wouldn't go down, I wouldn't agree with. And I absolutely will say the only podcasts I really can't stand listening to from him are the ones about Trump, because he has one of the worst... Here's the thing. On one level, it's the least sort of hysterical response to it, but still, and melodramatic, but still one of the most outrageous cases of Trump derangement syndrome I've ever seen. But every other topic... What a fascinating guy. As I've already pointed out in other videos, occult thinkers, Ramsey Duke, Peter J. Carroll, Kenneth Grant's a very underrated one, a very controversial one, but some fantastic thoughts that I don't agree with even half of them, but really innovative thinking. Obviously, most of my favourite authors have thoughts and expressions that I don't agree with that I thought were brilliant. Christopher Hitchens. Who else have we got up there? Robert Anton Wilson. Dostoevsky, Colin Wilson. Well, there's loads of them. Twch Tuorila, I assume this guy's Finnish, says, thoughts on Kiyashima moving to Envious. Good move for Envious. They've got a better player there. They've got a player who can role play, who can do a lot, who can also be an aggressive entry player. So I hope they play more aggressively now. Don't play as slow. I'm not sure how he'll work with Happy, because I know he had his issues towards the end with Happy. I hope he's made to be like essentially sort of like the third star of the team with Scream and RPK. So that could be that team on paper has a really good lineup. It's just, can they get the best out of all of them? Can they play on a good level? If they can, they'll be a top 10 team, and maybe they could even have runs to like semis or have an upside like a G2. That's far from seen though, because a couple of them are way below par and haven't been that relevant for a while now. So good move for Envious. Not that good a move for Kiyashima. I would have rather seen him, quite frankly, in a Mouse Sports or an Optic type lineup. So I think that's not as great from him. Okay, actually, I'm going to skip one of these because someone asked me about Mixwell and Optic. I'll address that in a video somewhere. Elliot Horscore says, do I think Magus to Astralis is a good move? I'll address that in a video as well. Ame222 says, this is the last question. How would you make the Swedish Counter-Strike scene better? Swedish Dream Team? First of all, I would like for there to be a lot more emphasis on tactical in-game leaders. They have a massive drought of in-game leaders in Sweden. Secondly, I would like NIP to stop relying on that core, to be much more open to roster moves. Thirdly, yes, I might make a Swedish Dream Team, but my Swedish Dream Team, I would probably make it something like... Right, there's so little in-game leaders, I've got to go with Golden, I guess. I'll have Golden, Get Right, Forest, Olofmeister, Krims. And the whole point of why I'm going to do that is Krims and Olofmeister. Like, here's where I'd run this as a star team. Because they're so different, I think Forest, Olofmeister and Get Right could exist. And I think that if Olof plays more of an entry role like he has been doing recently, and actually did to some degree as a superstar, he can be the entry, Forrest can be the follow-up, and you could have a nutty fucking entry duo like that. Get Right's going to hang back more, Krims is going to be more my supportive player, Golden's going to run the tactics. I think that's a fucking fire lineup. Now, this episode, obviously there'll be another one for next month. I want to thank Dean Tanglis, Michael Allaire, Andreas Westerlund, Alex Adams, Gman, Twch, Jerky's Minion, Anthony, TGreb, Jake Petrucci, Jordan, Tsenkov, Daniel Yordanov, And as usual, if you want to be someone who can contribute questions, then go and donate $10 or more to my Patreon and you will be able to. Also, different reward tiers. I made a lot of different ones and you still get the content no matter, even if you can't financially support me. Don't worry about it if you can't. Just enjoy the content. But if you want to take part, it's available in that sense. And I'll be doing another one. If you contribute this month and you're wondering, where am I? Where's my question? Why haven't I been included? Well, you don't get billed until the end of the month. So as far as I'm concerned, you pay and then you get the product, because I've seen a lot of people, I won't say a lot of people, a couple of people put the money in and then they never got billed and their account declined. So guess what? You don't get jack shit, matey. Right. Thanks to everyone for supporting it. Hope you enjoy the content.